right, everybody, welcome to the BizDad recap episode. This week, we're going to be talking all about fatherhood, as being a father, being a dad is like the number one thing for me in the world. I love being a dad. I love talking about it. So please just listen to this recap episode from all these amazing fathers that we've had on the podcast this year. I really hope that you enjoy and get some nuggets out of this. If you hear something that strikes your fancy, that you're just saying, hey, I really want to learn more about this person, jump back to the full episode, listen to the whole thing. We have some amazingly insightful dads who have some great advice for you to be able to pull from and learn from. So please jump back, listen to the full episode, take notes, and please reach out if you have any questions for me or anything, please. So please enjoy this episode on fatherhood, and we'll have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and we'll see you guys all in the new year. Welcome to the BizDad podcast. I am super excited to talk to Maddie Aitchison on the podcast today with your daughters as they grow up and they get older, obviously right now at 9, 6, and coming in June, probably around the time this podcast finally comes out too. But as that is going on, what kind of things are you thinking in your brain? Okay, as they get older, these are the things that, like, this is the framework I want to make sure is instilled within them so that they try to travel down the best path. Obviously, our kids are going to make their own decisions, but we want to lay the path properly so they choose the right way to go. But what sort of frameworks are you implementing as a family, as a dad, and as a husband and wife team to parent your kids?
Yeah, it starts with Marie and I, how we model what a healthy relationship looks like, how we prioritize ourselves and our time over the kids, to be completely honest. Like they know their priorities, they know they're our world, and yet they don't dominate us as individuals and they don't dominate us as a couple. Those are really important things. And so we consistently carve out every Saturday. They know what's going down every Saturday. They are going somewhere because we're going on date night. We do our one-on-ones with the kids. We do what we call relationship recharges. That started with Marie and I, and then the kids actually asked me to start doing them with them. So I started doing my relationship recharges with my kids. We go over our core values just about every single day. When I pick the kids up, I ask them to tell me one thing that they're grateful for, one thing that went great, one thing that didn't, and one thing they did that exemplified our core values. My kids will literally, they will police each other and police Marie and I based on our core values. If Marie and I have a little bit of a spicy conversation or an elevated discussion, every once in a while, it's great. My kids will hold me accountable. Dad, are you talking with kindness and respect to mom? My girls hold me accountable, but it's beautiful. Yeah. That's exactly why we have discussions around core values every day, why we reward them, we're in alignment with them, why we course correct behavior when they're out of alignment with them. Mm-hmm. And that's just something that I want to be second nature for my kids, is their values ingrained in their DNA and who they are. Obviously, they're going to incorporate in their own unique skills and special traits and characteristics. They'll be given the foundational building blocks of who we are, what we stand for, what we believe in, what we don't believe in. We can be respectful of people who are different from us or don't think the way we do or lead a different life, right? But this is what we stand for. And I think it's been the kind of backbone and spine of our family has been our core values, shared experiences, and all the teachings that go along each and every day as we lead and live our lives is very important. Your kids are smart, like you said, right? It's not what you tell them, it's what you show them. They don't necessarily listen all the time. For me, I just wanted to make sure I was showcasing how to be a good husband, a great partner to the individual you love the most. So one, I was teaching them what a strong male should look like and they should expect in their relationships going forward. The other side is holding them accountable and giving them balanced runway to mess up, learn these lessons on their own, but at the same time, still give them sometimes the guidance and support they need to maybe expedite some of these learning lessons or maybe avoid some of them altogether.
Yeah, for sure. I tell my boys all the time, my goal is to make them better men than me. Now I've had to adjust because my daughter can't be a better man than me. My job is to make sure she can find a better man than me. If I can represent what a good husband looks like, then she can know, oh, this is what a healthy, good marriage looks like and what it means to have a respectful husband at home and not get ruled by some terrorist in the house or by find some guy who's not willing to stand up for her, but be there on both sides.
How are you? Good. I think you're wearing Christmas pajamas. Didn't Santa come a couple months ago? Or are you hoping that he's going to come visit again?
He said that he hoping he's going to visit again. He just threw his headphone out of his ear. So
Santa's gone. Screw this.
What do you think? Is Santa going to come back because you're wearing Christmas pajamas? He'll never come, yeah. I was listening to a podcast yesterday in the car as I was driving somewhere, and they were talking about homeschooling, and they were like, yeah, I homeschool, so my kids are in pajamas all day. I was like, thank God I'm not the only one.
My kids are too. In a shirt on top, running around in their underwear down below. Or unhomeschooled. We homeschool the girls. The other thing that I have found important is the calendaring aspect of our family bunker. We have multiple time blocks throughout the week that are family bunkers. Just like a bunker, you can hide, be safe. Nobody can snipe you out of the bunker, distract you, pull you away from the stuff that's most important. We carved those family bunker times out in our calendar. I layered into my calendar first and built my business and personal stuff around that. So those are precious moments that you get to spend with the kids. And the fact that you're able to work at home, build a business, and still be present with your kids and do a podcast with them. Those are things that most kids won't ever experience in their life with their parent. I think it's a very special thing to spotlight. It's possible for more people now than ever, especially through podcasts like yours, giving people tools, tips, resources, and just access to seeing that it is possible. I would love to see more parents be proactive and engaged. I think more are now than ever.
Yeah. At least I hope so. I wonder sometimes, do I think, because there's a lot more parents getting involved, but I also look, because of the group that we're around, oftentimes, do I have a bias because of groups like Abundance where we're like, oh yeah, of course we've got involved dads, because that's just the type of guys we're around. I looked at the military, the amount of divorces I saw of not involved parents. I always told people, you're going to affect your children's lives one way or another. Do you want to do it while living in the house and affecting them positively, or from the other side of the world when you don't really have a choice? Either way, you're affecting their life and what their outcome is. So which one would you prefer? I don't know. I never feel like that question landed the way I was hoping it would with some of the folks, but I'm hoping that after I left, that it really kicked them in the shin and was like, man, I need to fix this, because
it's priceless. I had an opportunity a couple of years back to make a multi-7-figure opportunity. It would have taken me out of my house 2 weeks out of every month. There was a quote I shared with you earlier that I live by. There's no amount of money or success worth sacrificing the sanctity and success of your household. There will be seasons after my kids are 18, they're out of the house, they've got their own lives, that I'll go, man, I'm willing to grind and get after it again. I'm prioritizing memories and experiences with my kids over money right now. I still am trying to find balance, and hey, I want to build something. I'm passionate about my business. I want to create wealth and abundance in the process, but there's a lot of people who call themselves businessmen with a family. And then there are some people that call themselves a family man with a business. And I think there is a very big difference. There's a lot of people who say they're doing it for their kids, wife, freedom, and legacy, yet they're estranged from their kids and they have very turbulent and broken and unhealthy marriages, and they're bankrupt in all these other areas of life. And yet they've got great abundance and financial success, and they're empty inside. And I just knew that when I was looking at those two types of millionaires, I definitely wanted to be the one that was living just as purposefully in my bank account as I was with my wife, as I was with my kids, as I was with my health, right? In all the areas that mattered to me. And I wanted to make sure my audio matched my video, my calendar, my commitments, and my decisions. I have this sticky notes on my teleprompter that says, does the decision you are about to make align with what you value and what you see your life looking like in 5 years? If it's not aligned with my core values, not aligned with my 5-year vision, which just sits on my desk every day and I read this, I am not going to say yes to it. It's easy to justify and create a narrative that allows you to make some of those decisions, which ultimately take away from your kids and take away from your marriage. If I were to wake up in 10 or 15 years with my kids out of the house and 10 or $20 million more, but I was wishing I could give it all back to get that time with them, then forget the money and create as much, abundance and time freedom as you possibly can with your kids. Because have you heard of Sahil Bloom? He put out a post and a podcast that was called The Time Billionaire. And it was essentially taking the studies of, let me see if I can pull it up for you. But it basically was taking the studies from 80 years of data on participants. It was about how your time, it was showing this graph of as your kids age, how much time you had with them. You spend 80% of your time with your kids by, I think, the age of 10. And then it really starts to decline over time. And I'm going, man, I've got a 9-year-old, a 6-year-old, and another baby on the way. And I'm going, I want to just get as much ROI in that time with them as I possibly can. There's nothing, if I'm aligned with my values and what's important to me, there's nothing more important than that. So the filter that I make a lot of my decisions through is it taking away from my kids, my wife, because just because the money is there and you can validate that answer, checking a box and saying yes to it, I wasn't going to do that at the sacrifice of my family.
How do you balance that thought process as you're creating your calendar, executing business decisions, buying hotels, medical office buildings, and various other stuff? How do you go, okay, I really need to make sure I'm focused on this time for these things and that time for those things? How are you working that on a practice?
Balance is definitely a myth, in my opinion. I just, again, through frameworks and awareness, figure out if I'm swinging too far in one direction, I need to figure out how to counterbalance and get it back, right? That being said, when I travel and I leave the house, which I do, I think that is also actually very important and healthy. I don't need to be around my kids all the time. They need to go and experience discipline and failures and socialization and leadership and people challenging them and people getting them in trouble beyond just me being present. I think there's a lot of people who are around their kids all the time and they're actually not present and they're not actually bringing true value in the experiences and moments they have with their kids. And I know that there are people who spend a lot less time than those individuals and they make a far greater impact. So for me, it was finding what that balance looked like. And again, it shifts in seasons based on where the kids are at, based on where I'm at, what I have going on. Something that consistently comes up is just making sure that if a season is going to take away potentially from my kids or my family, that I'm getting 100% buy-in from all of them. Hey, I got a big hotel project coming on. That's going to require daddy to go up to Tahoe a couple more times a week over the next 3 to 6 months. I can take you girls with me. We can FaceTime and I'll never be gone longer than X. Does that sound good? Is that fair? What do you think? I like to include my kids in these decisions. It's a great way for them to problem solve and navigate challenges. I think it's healthy for kids to be away from their safety nets. I'm a big safety net for my kids and my wife is too. And I think it's healthy for them to learn to process people leaving and coming back. When my kids were little, they always used to say, but Dad, don't leave. And I said, I'm only gone. The beautiful thing with technology nowadays is we can get on FaceTime. One staple in my house is Dad's leaving. And then I always say, but what? And they always go, but you'll always come back. And that's just something, right, that they understand. That's part of why I do what I do. I build awesome things that bring value to people, which actually brings value to our family to be able to go and do all these fun things that you girls love doing. And now the cool part is when you're an entrepreneur and obviously your kids are homeschooled, I can involve my kids in the business. I got them doing fun things, sitting in here doing a podcast, right? Working with my mom right next door, doing paperwork. So there's a lot of cool stuff that comes with that. But that being said, we try and keep the conversations consistent that allow us, again, to head on next week. Here's where I need your support. I'm doing X, Y, and Z, or you're gone next week. I need you to do this and this before you take. So it's just constant communication and just making sure that we're counterbalancing based on the season and challenges.
Yeah, we're always going to have them. Might as well figure out how to work around them. You say you homeschool your kids as well?
Yeah, my wife does. Yep.
Awesome. I can't wait for my wife to retire next year because she's going to help take over that part of the
That's a lot of work, man.
Yeah, it's a beast. Yeah,
it is a beast.
It's worthwhile. We're doing a tour of an acting academy at the end of this week just to get an idea.
We got one in town here,
so I can learn more about it.
Pull the kids out of school. What was your court?
I traveled a lot for the military. I loved it, but I never got to bring the family. I still love to travel, and I'd love to bring you guys. I prefer not to get reported to the county for never having my kids in school.
Yeah, right.
We did trips to Philadelphia, not San Antonio. I got to teach them about all of this stuff. While on the trip, I'm knocking stuff out to show them what the world actually is and expose them to different countries and cultures. I really want to impact my kids a little bit more. Not to mention, I was looking at 45-hour school week for a third grader between being in school and homework. When does my third grader get to be a kid? You're working more than a full-time job. It didn't make sense to me. The benefit inside a house is, depending on which one you go to, of course, they're a little bit more lenient on having you take off on a vacation because they understand the same thing. Like your kid's going to learn a ridiculous amount just traveling with you and doing the stuff in the world. So that's one of the reasons I'm looking at that. And somewhere something's got to give. Because right now I've got so much going on. Homeschool is tough. But I get on a podcast that's 2 hours long while just finishing up getting homeschool done with the kids. And it's okay. Now I got to run a business too. When am I going to do that?
We thought the same thing in the sense of all the same reasons you did. We're in California. Public schools are getting a little wild with some of the stuff they're teaching kids, which felt misaligned with what we believe in, and not necessarily wanting to have our kids in those environments and exposed to that kind of stuff. But that being said, a lot of the other reasons, like you mentioned, just to give them more practical skills. The education system is very broken. We could talk about that for hours, but that's for another podcast. But that being said, we're like, if there's anybody that I want influencing, good or bad, and setting my kids up for success and investing in them, there's nobody better than us. If we truly are in a capacity to do that, even with it being a really big time commitment, energy commitment, you're a teacher, you're a business owner, and you're relearning curriculums, trying to teach kids that would be productive in today's world, which is very different than what the education system is teaching people, because it's transformed drastically over the last decade, let alone 2, let alone 3. And we're teaching curriculums back from multiple decades ago. So it was just one of those things where I felt like, hey, we're on year 4 now. And our kids are doing great, and they're still socialized. They're still in other extracurricular activities, still getting leadership and discipline and coaching from other adults in other environments. They're socialized with other kids. They're in sports. They do all kinds of activities. And so we feel good about where that has led us and our children. Whether they decide to be entrepreneurs or not, entrepreneurship has given me the ability to expose them, like you said, to cultures, to cities, to states, to things outside of what unfortunately most people get stuck in, which is their little box. I want to have as many data points up on the board for my kids to look at and connect dots on and figure out what path makes sense for them. Instead of driving where they need to go or what they need to think or do, we want to expose them to as much as possible with our core values and foundational pillars. Give them as much freedom to navigate beyond traditional frameworks.
Yeah. I 100% am behind that same thought process. Yesterday, my kids were watching the Tuttle Twins. They've got books for kids and shows. It was like juxtaposing school in 1850 versus school now. And it was like, oh, we drove up in this car. And then they, like in the scene next to it, it was like a horse and buggy pulling up and they were getting out. And they're like, oh my goodness. And they're like, I'm texting mom, letting her know I'm at school. And then there was like this little kid like doing Morse code, like saying, hey, I'm at school. Then they get in the classroom and it was the same exact thing from like 1850. Here's 5 desks with 5 students with a teacher at the chalkboard. They were like, well, are you kidding me? I was like, yeah, no joke. That does not need to be what school needs to look like. Like when you're trying to create all these little robots to do exactly what you want them to do, then that's what you put them through is the same exact training. I couldn't get behind that at all. I always had the kids in private school. Like my oldest, I even put them in a classical Christian school. So they taught like Latin and went down a different route than even a traditional Christian school. But it was still, there was so much that I was like, and I can't even travel the way I want to. I got to say goodbye to my kids more than I want to. I'd love to say, hey, let's go to my kids more. Hey, goodbye. So now it's been an absolute game changer, and I don't want to change it. But one of the kids, my youngest, is, man, I really want to go, or my middle, actually, my youngest is 10 months, but he's, I really want to go to school, and I love playing with friends. Yeah. Well, you got to remember you were at daycare, not school. It's a little different when you're sitting behind a desk the entire time, but we'll see how it goes.
Hey, we're not going to say we're going to do this forever. We're not going to say we're going to do something different. We're going to take it one step at a time, 1 year at a time. We're going to meet the kids where they're at. A lot can change in a short period of time.
I'm excited to talk to another real estate guy, a dad who loves travel. Chase Calhoun, looking forward to getting to know you a little bit more.
Goal trading is a big part of GoAbundance and business and stuff like that. In the past, we hadn't set any specific like family goals together. So I've always done mine and tried to include them in the ones that I'm setting for the family and stuff. One thing that we're doing this year, we're just stealing the way that GoAbundance does it, because I think they do a really good job with the one sheet. Is we're all working on our one sheets, at least the goals part of it together. Obviously, with Nico's, but he's still interested in it. He wants to calculate out his $275 net worth and set his fitting his goal and stuff. And so that's kind of what we're working on right now. We're all doing the one sheets together and then just going through them. So we're being open about it and our goals, and that allows him to see not just that he's able to set goals, but stuff that I'm setting and what that looks, and same thing with his mom. And obviously Aspen's too young for that stuff right now. Yeah. At some point, I'm sure she's a little bit older to get plugged in as well.
For sure. Yeah, my little girl's 8 months old, almost 9 months old. So same thing. Not much there, but man, oh man, let it seep in as much as we can. Let it seep in. So I love that you're including the one sheet into the family side of the house. This year was the first year that my wife and I actually sat down and did goals for 2024. And it was a lot of like I had a lot of reps doing goals and things like that with GoBundance and operating a couple of businesses. But her, not so much, right? Because being in the Air Force, they kind of tell us where we're going and what we're doing, and we just drive after the tasks that need to get done. So it was such a different experience. How did you introduce your wife, especially, and Nico into this thing called a one sheet and goal setting and all of that? How did you introduce that?
I think with Brenda, I've been in GoBundance for a while, and this will be the second time that her or I have done it. And it was just something I brought up that I tell this to other people that aren't in GoBundance. Like, I think it's helpful to sit down and do. For me, I've gotten the most out of going through the one sheet because it forces me to really think about those goals that I'm putting down. So it's not just like, say, I want to do all these things, but it actually forces me to sit down and articulate them in a way that's measurable. So I talked to her about it and said that it might be something that would be helpful for you, and then we could also share it. And maybe it'd be helpful for you to see what my stuff is so that you can have a little bit of understanding of sometimes the craziness that we get when we're driven towards business. And we did. So we both did them and then we shared them. And I think it was a really good experience, especially for us. But then I think Nico, so one thing that is important for you is to try to, like you said, to expose him to different group of people. And I might be on a GoPod call or whatever, and he'll be in the car with me on the way to school, and I'm not hiding those conversations and stuff from him. So he's sucking in and absorbing it. And so it's like something that's interesting to him. Like, he wants to learn more about it. And then again, not being, obviously I might be a little bit more stringent on myself, or my GoPod maybe hold me a little bit more accountable on my stuff, but at least just let him get exposed to it and practice it a little bit. And when you see it like throughout the year, if he's, whatever, his basketball recently, where he's on a set of goal for go out and dribble for a certain amount of time every day, because he's starting to realize that if you can set goals on what are you trying to accomplish, set the goal on a day, and you need to practice or put the work in to get that goal. And so it's just cool to see it play out like that a little bit.
Yeah, that's convicted me a little bit, because I've never actually shared any of those goals with my kids and I talk to my son, my oldest, because he loves to golf, and I talk to him about, I'm not getting as good as I want to. And I'm like, are you out in the backyard practicing? When was the last time you swung the club? Not on the course. And you're not going to get any better. I think that showing that and having that, as has been said multiple times on this podcast, kids catch more, like they catch more than they're taught, right? It's the things that they learn are caught more than taught. So if I can show him, and hey, like, Daddy's in here setting goals. Do you want to come in and watch, or do you want to come in and see what my goals are? And one of the things they always want to ask about, I don't know what it is about kids, they always want to ask about how much money we have. And I've yet to figure out how to expose them to that. Not that we're crazy wealthy by any means, but how do I expose my kids to it? I don't really know. I haven't figured that part out yet, but I feel like I have time because they're 9 and 5 and 8 months old. But at the same point, man, like, they're already asking, they're already interested. So I should have a better answer to that. Is that something that you have conversations about in your family, like with the kids, or is that not something you guys have talked about yet?
You know, it is. I can honestly say, Nico's asked me before, we've talked about it, and I've been pretty open. And it's interesting. I've had conversations with other men who are very successful, or way more successful, and they have adult kids that don't even know how much money he makes or they make or their worth or whatever. And so for me, it's just always been important to be, and I don't know that this is the right way to do it. This is what I've done. Just be open about it. Not that, to me, there's no reason to hide it. And I don't know that I would share it with maybe somebody that was just a random person or whatever. Yeah, of course. I don't think, like, for Nico, if he's interested in it, there's no reason to hide it. And then if he's got questions, like, I try to answer the questions about it, because I think sometimes even me, like, I can hear numbers about certain things, or I can hear about something until you're like really going with it. You don't necessarily fully understand it, but at least exposing them to it. So that's something I've always been pretty open about with him. And if he has questions, I'll answer the questions. And so it's just not really, as far them, and even at a young age, it's just not that big of a deal. It's just something that kind of interesting meetings.
Yeah, I guess before my concern was, what are they going to say to kids at school, and what's all that? And I really shouldn't care about that, right? I really should be just protecting my sons and helping him know what's going on, and showing him that the questions he has are valid, and I want to be able to answer them, and I'm an open book. And so I need to do a better job on that, and just showing, especially now I homeschool. So that the thing that I'm saying was one of my concerns about him blabbing to other kids at school, like, my dad's got $1 million. Like, I don't, what's that going to look like? But yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, I need to teach him how to be responsible. And part of that is going to be having these conversations. One thing that I saw in what you wrote up in the pre-call stuff, and something that I'm still struggling with a lot, is like this thing. Even when we're out and about and actually being present while we're on a vacation, or actually being present, or sometimes I just have the conversation with the kids. Just because we're traveling doesn't mean daddy's on vacation. Just because it's a holiday and I'm not making you guys do schoolwork doesn't mean daddy doesn't have work too. But like, how, I know it's something you said that you're struggling with, and I don't know what thought you've given to it yet, if that actual being present. What does your lack of presence look like, and how did you catch that you're doing it?
It's just be on the cell phone or work, and everything I do for my business, and a cell phone is like the tool that I use to do it. And so the biggest thing for me has been, especially like when we're traveling, is how do I not be on it as little as possible? Like, I have to be realistic. Like you said, I've got to be realistic that if some emergency comes up or something needs to be dealt with, I'm going to have to be on it minimally. But how can I at least be aware of it and be like, try to minimize it? Like a lot of times what I'll personally do when we're traveling, like I'll just wake up a little bit extra early when everybody's still asleep, and I'll try to get through emails, respond to stuff. And if I'm going to have calls with my people, I'll try to do those in the morning before anybody's ever really even getting up and stirring. And then that way, when we're doing our fun stuff during the day, if we're at Universal Studios or going to the pool or something, if I don't have to be on my phone the whole time. And then really just trying to practice that as much as possible. And I'm also like, I get really guilty of it like at home. And so, because I'll be working all day, and sometimes I just want to sit on the couch and go on the cell phone for a little bit and just try to catch when I'm doing that and go plug it in somewhere else or whatever. And just, especially like with my daughter, just spend some time and play with her. And Nico's starting to get to that age where it's like, he's not necessarily upset if we are leaving him alone. And so it's just there. But with her, just spending the time, it's a big thing. Like we travel, like we're going to Vermont. And so I'm still going to have to work that whole week. We're in Vermont from that trip, but I'll probably be very intentional on getting up early and trying to knock that stuff out early before everybody's awake. That way, if we're going to go snowboarding or do something, I'm not stuck on the phone the whole time.
Yeah, it's such a bear because everything is so right there in front of you, and it's so easy. Oh, I just have to send this message. That's all it is. But that's not all it is, right? Because you were in the middle of a story, or you just got done with a story and it would have transitioned into something else fun. And now you're breaking that, sending that email, sending that, replying to that message, answering that phone call, and then coming back, and they're already onto something else. And it's now what opportunity did I just lose because I picked up that phone, or what did I just miss out on? I'm trying to figure out a little bit more. And I actually just hired somebody to help me manage some of my calendar so that I'm not like being a workaholic all the time. Like where can I really dedicate certain parts of my calendar? Because I know that I'm terrible at that. So I had to hire in an outside help to make sure that I'm doing this right. But man, oh man, it's something that I really struggle with. Even when homeschooling, like I have on my calendar 7 to 10, I'm homeschooling. So every day, Monday through Friday, I'm out there with the kids, supposed to be there from 7 to 10. We don't usually start at 7. It's usually closer to 7:30, 8 o'clock before we actually get started. The kids take a little while to get up and moving, but that's not very much time. And I can manage to do that. But for some reason, this is always right next to me. And I'll manage to get a call. I'll see an email come in. I'll do something. And it's, okay, yeah, let me 1 second. And then I'll get back to your spelling test. And it's, boy, what am I telling my sons? What am I teaching them right now? And it's so difficult to put that down. It is like a little drug. Have you seen the movie Social Dilemma? Yeah. And I'm not even a teenager. I couldn't imagine being a teenager right now with what we have in the world. But goodness gracious, how are you? Oh, that brings a completely different question because Nico's just a couple years older than my son. How are you managing? Right now, my kid has an iPad, but if he goes to an internet site, he has to bring it to me and I have to approve literally every single site he goes to, which is exhausting and makes me want to take away that thing. But at the same point, I'm like, no, I don't like, he wants to play these video games that he has access to the world. And my previous life, I've done I was a criminal investigator and counterintelligence guy for a long time. So I know that kids on those games are not always kids on those games. There are other people that are trying to interact. What have you been looking at in your life and implementing, like showing, because obviously we're showing them that these are useful tools. What are you doing to present that to Nico as you're growing him and raising him into being a young man?
So one thing is we probably don't provide as much technology to him as he would like and one of his friends get. Again, I don't know. I hear both sides. Some people say you were just hurting them because that's the future and she'll care and here's what it is. Like, you have video games before. So like, he's played video games when he goes to your friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's probably a little bit weird. There's probably not too many kids his age that don't have video game consoles or whatever. We just never had them. Yeah, we just never had him in the house, and so he doesn't play video games unless he's at a friend's house or whatever. That's one thing. And if he is playing like any kind of video games or whatever, it's like he's got like on the school computer, which is like he's building his own game type thing, and then he gets to play it. But it's not Call of Duty on the Xbox type video game. Yeah, and then he does have a tablet that has access to the internet. I've always been very clear to him that we're going to look at everything he's looking at, and he needs to really guard himself and pay attention to what he's clicking on and what he's looking at, and then following up on it. Where I'll walk into the room and he's watching YouTube or something, I'll have to ask him what he's watching and ask to look at it and show him, look at what he's been searching on there, and looked at, so he knows that we're involved and what's going on. And Sydney, so far, he's 11, so it's first feeling real concerned, but he's been pretty good about it. Yep. But like the same thing, like a lot of his friends go have cell phones. To me, it's just crazy, and so he doesn't have a cell phone. I don't know what point he'll get one, but it'll probably be substantially older by the time he gets one. And it's probably something that he's going to have to buy himself if he really wants one and pay for. And he does have, we've got a watch for him, which is like a smart watch that we can call him and text him and stuff, but it's only people that we enter into his contacts that he can communicate with. And again, it's just similar. Like, I have a background in law enforcement, so I've seen some of the true evil that's out there, and we may be a little bit, some people may consider us a little bit over the top, which it's something that we take important.
Yeah. What smartwatch is that? I'm curious.
Oh, I think it's called a Gizmo. It's through Verizon. So I've got my business phone accounts through Verizon. It's pretty informal. Like, I want to say it was like $100 and it's $5 or $10 a month. It's perfect because it gives us the benefit of the cell phone. Is then if I go to pick him up from after school, I could call him and he can answer right on the watch and talk to me. Or if he needs me, he can call me or text me on it. But again, it doesn't allow anybody any outside communication unless we're the ones that entered into that app. So it's been very helpful.
But let's talk a little bit about the travels that you're doing and the travels that you actually want to do. Like, what are your goals behind traveling with your family? You said you bring them, whether sometimes you're not sure if it's practical that you do it or not, but what are your goals around the travels? And how much involvement do you have, especially for Nico, since he's 11, with choosing where to travel and when to travel and all that type of stuff?
So these last couple of years, we've traveled a fair amount. So it's been really important to me, for whatever reason, to bring my entire family with me, including Nico and now Aspen. And again, even if like flying with Aspen is not always practical, he's been traveling since she was just a baby, right? But I enjoy being able to bring them and bringing them on trips when it's like, again, like Vermont, like I'm going for the Go Abundance event, but bringing them along with me so they can be exposed to what I'm doing there, but then also we make some fun time out of it. And then just trying to I don't think that I would necessarily go to Nico and say, hey, you pick where we're traveling. But if we are going to be traveling somewhere, trying to sprinkle some fun stuff for him so that he gets some memories along the way and just little stuff. We decided to travel for Thanksgiving this year. So we went somewhere, but it might go somewhere warm and sunny for Thanksgiving this year. But along the way, we stopped in Orlando, Florida, and did Universal Studios for the day. And realistically, like a lot of that was for Nico specifically, because he was the perfect age where he really can enjoy that. Stuff like that, I think. And then, and not just traveling, but like little trips or fun things that maybe Nico can enjoy that are like experience-based. And I give you an example. This wasn't just for Nico, right? This is something I did actually with my dad and my brother and Nico. We're from the Bay Area, personally into sports, like at all, like heck, care less, right? But like my dad, my brother, and Nico are very into basketball. And so the Warriors, which is a Bay Area team, were playing in the playoffs against the Memphis Grizzlies, which is like drivable to us, only 2 hours away. And so it's like taking them on a small trip and going to watch the Grizzlies play the Warriors in a playoff game. That was a ton of fun for Nico and then also for my dad and just get to enjoy it. So smaller trips like that to do what I like doing, but definitely the bigger trips are fun. Nico doesn't get to come with us. We try to balance it. Same thing, like we don't want to pull. He goes to really good school, and so depending on where we're going, what we're doing, we may leave him here and let him keep doing school thing. But again, he's just off for 2 weeks for Christmas break, and we're pulling him out for a week because I think it's more important for him to get out of those experiences. And as long as he's not falling behind in school, I think he's going to learn more and remember more about the trips and get you go snowboarding, doing that kind of stuff, then having an extra couple days in math classes that were going to help them in life. And so that's why it's available for me.
Yeah. Awesome. I absolutely love that. And I'm the same way. I think it's much more important to drag them around and show them the world than it is to sit in the classroom. Like, they're going to learn a lot more coming with me than they are going to be sitting in the classroom. Sure, they may need a little bit more help with some of their multiplication tables or something. And, well, okay, we'll work on that. But man, oh man, they're going to learn a whole lot more jumping around the country with me, or the world in some cases. Okay. Yeah, those experiences seem to be something that our kids tie strongly to. That's one of those things that we never went on. I literally don't ever remember going on a vacation when I was a kid. We only had like stops on between moves. That was our vacation. Like, we're moving from one state to another. We're going to make a stop or two. There was this one Radisson hotel. I still remember it to this day. Like, we're moving from New Mexico to South Carolina. So I was probably first grade, second grade, something like that. And we stop at this hotel, and there's a rainforest inside there or something. And these are the things that I'm like, I tie that brain power to. I don't remember any of the toys that I ever got. I know I had a Teddy Ruxpin, but I don't remember it. It's not like that mattered anything to me. But man, those moments in the cabin for you are probably, that's what I try to pass on to the kids too. So you mentioned that's something that you're sticking with now, that's brought as a father for you. What does that look like in your world now, in your life as a family man now?
So one thing that we did last year, and it was unexpected, we weren't less necessarily looking for a second home or a lake home, but we had one just come to us that we couldn't really pass up. And so we spent the money and bought like our lake house. And so one thing that I've been trying to be really intentional about is just getting away and going up there, even if it's just for a couple of days on the weekend. It's close enough. So our cabin when I was growing up was 4.5 hours away, and I still love going up there, but it was like, we couldn't go that often because it was a little bit of a trek to get up there. It's close enough that I'm trying to get away once or twice a month and just get up there, and it's quiet. It's easier to relax. It's good family time. And so that's definitely something I'm trying to do. And then our lives are a little bit different. My life's a little bit different than when I was growing up. And so I do travel a fair amount. One thing I try to be super intentional about is I try to take my family with me a lot of times when I travel. Mm-hmm. And it's just something even sometimes, I don't know, they necessarily enjoy it as much as I do, but I love to take them with me and share the experiences, right? And especially like GoBundance and groups like that, there's a lot of events that I'll want to go to. And sometimes it's not feasible. It's going to be something real quick, but whenever possible, I try to take everybody with me, even if not practical. So I think it's good to share those experiences, because again, that's the stuff they're going to remember, not they're going to remember easy homeworking than to go GoBundance trip, not the toys they got for Christmas that ended up in the back of the closet.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. I am excited to have Alan Underwood on the call.
Most of my kids, the older ones, are starting to make decisions. One way I think that we are is, even though my path in life has been entrepreneurial, and I believe strongly in that being what I felt was the best course for me, my oldest daughter's husband is going to be in school for 15 years. I would never be able to do that. But again, I can see that as something that lights him up, that he gets excited for. It doesn't matter that he's not pursuing my dream or what I think was best. I might be able to see a path where, hey, with your talents and skills, I think you can get here faster doing it this way. But he's chosen what he wants to do. And I think for my wife and I, it's how do we support them during that? That's going to be hard, going to school for that long. We're blessed to help. I think it falls on us to help without getting in the way of learning hard lessons. I don't want to facilitate not struggling, but there is a way, I think, where, and how we do that in practicality is when we go up, we try and fill up the fridge with groceries, or take them clothes shopping, or just the extra things that I know their budget's not going to stretch for. And that's something that we can do.
Yeah, I keep struggling with the school thing. What I want to do, especially with where we see colleges moving towards, from my perspective anyways, I don't know if I want my kids in there. There's a Christian pastor that I listen to, Vodi Bakum. And one of the things he says, how can we expect to send our kids to Caesar schools and not expect them to come back hailing Caesar? That's one of the reasons. I already had my kids in private school, but now it's one of the reasons I homeschool. I want to impact my kids on a deeper level. Just yesterday, I bought a new truck, and I was working on it, new to me truck, but an old truck. And we're working on it, putting in a new turbo and doing all sorts of stuff. So I brought the kids over. I said, hey, put the books away. Let's work on the truck. This is going to be part of homeschool today. And I got to explain different things to them on what daddy was doing and why it was just like this indoctrination factory at the moment. I don't know which way you lean. But when you're going from homeschool to sending a child to school for 15 years, where does that thought process go? How did you prepare your kids to go into an environment like that from homeschooling?
Yeah, great question. It all comes down to character, right? I think we forge the character of our kids' lives at home. That's where we forge their character. And in a lot of ways, I think we've delegated that with the current school system. As soon as kids are 4 or 5, we're sending them 8 hours a day to be with a stranger to imprint their values. I could see the product coming out of the schools, and I didn't like what I was seeing. Maybe I had an advantage as an entrepreneur. Your job is to see a problem and solve it. And because I didn't like the product that was coming out, I knew that we had to have a different process. And that's how we decided to do homeschooling. I've got a son, incredibly talented in creating things visually, and then taking that visual creation in his mind and turning it into something. And he would like to be an engineer. And I can see that being a great path for him in fulfilling some gifts that he's been given. If he chooses to, I'm not going to oppose any of my kids going to college. I'll support them. I've got to instill values I believe are important: love of God, love of country, love of self, and love of others. If I can teach those things, then I think I've done my job. Now, they may choose something different once they get out, but I also think that now that I have adult kids, I'm learning to parent adult kids. And that's a challenge because I want them to struggle a little. I want them to learn from struggles, but I don't want them to drown. That's a difficult balance. And they just need to know I'm still there and that we can have a good relationship. I have a habit tracker with each of my kids' names, text at least twice a week. It may just be, hey, buddy, I'm thinking about you. Hope you're doing good. Or if I'm able to, I can drive by and stop at their work. What I can do is try and be present so that when they have a challenge, when they have a big decision to make, they know who they can talk to. And I think that's how it works. I'm pretty new at this whole adult kid parenting thing, and it is a challenge, but I think if they get to 18 and 19, you're like, my job's done, see ya, good luck with your life. What a way to wreck your kid.
No kidding.
That's what I want. I love hanging out with my kids.
I've said it multiple times on the podcast, and I'm going to probably say it a billion more times, but the way especially being entrepreneurs and talking to entrepreneurs, the way I look at it is our kids, each one of them are like our own little businesses. Every one of them are going to take a little bit of different work to get them moving in the right direction and functioning. Hopefully we can relinquish the CEO title when they turn 18, and then we could just go to a board of advisors title where we're just sending a message, hey, what's the P&L looking like? How are things going? Do you need anything? I want to be an advisor for my kids in perpetuity. It's a struggle constantly to figure out. I'm learning how to be a dad of 3 kids, a dad of a 9-year-old. It's a constantly changing target that I'm always trying to shoot for. And it's a lot of work, but man, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's a lot of fun. You've had 8 kids. Goodness gracious. My wife, I told her I'd have 7 if she'd let me. And she said, no, we're done at 3. But you had love of God, country, and self of others. How did you develop that? And how have you made sure you're implementing that onto your kids?
When I was driving to ASU, working at the car dealership, even at teen, I didn't love spending that car ride listening to the radio. I just felt like my brain was going to mush. And I would buy, and this will date you and I a little bit, but I would buy audio tapes and I would listen to audio tapes. And I've always loved history. I love especially biographies and autobiographies. I love reading about the personal experiences that historical figures have had, the struggles that they've experienced. There was one American historical figure who had a ring, and on that ring was God, country, family. And that impressed me that his values were so clear, that he understood what he was fighting for, what he was living for. It was God, family, and country in that order. You served in the Air Force. I didn't serve, but both of my grandparents did. My daughter's dating a guy who's in the Air Force right now. We have close ties, a lot of friends that have served. And I think the values that our country was founded on are good values. That doesn't mean America has been perfect at executing those values, but the values our country was founded on are worth fighting for and preserving. I think that's true also with my family values. We have a family mission statement we memorized together. Growing up, one of the severest rebukes from my dad was, an Underwood would never do that. That really hit home, that my family name had value. We stood for something, and there was an expectation to act according to those values. I've tried to teach my kids, they are carrying my name, their grandpa's name, their great-grandpa's name. This life isn't all about them. They have a duty of respect and honor to the people that have given them a good name.
Yeah, I love that. I've been trying to implement something like that with the family. If you look at some of the LeBars, they're not exactly top-notch individuals. They're all family, and I'm not going to take that away, but it's a bit of a rough go. I'm starting to push that on the kids. I haven't figured out how to best implement that. I just recently started a book about how to implement biblical values into your family in different ways, and it's a lot about even biblical habits and having these different habits and talking about different things. And I want to try to make that one of our habits, that we talk about who the LeBars are and why we do what we do, why we homeschool, why Dad runs businesses, why we believe the things we do, why we go to church every Sunday, why we host a church event at our house every Thursday, why we do these things, why they're important to us. So was that something that was like almost a mantra for you growing up? Underwoods don't do that. And is that love of God, love of country, love of self, love of others built in? You mentioned a family mission. I'd like to get on that. Is that something that you do as a habit? Do you guys go over these things as a habitual thing? Are they posted up in your house? What kind of things do you do for that?
We pray together twice a day. Last year, we read the New Testament. The year before, the Old Testament. We read scripture. We memorize. We have a rolling cadre of scriptures that we memorize as a family. We attend church every week. We're very active religiously. And that starts with my wife and I. My kids, your kids are going to follow what you do. You're their hero. And that is how you speak, how you think, how you eat, how you take care of yourself. All of those patterns they're going to mimic. And I have a responsibility to share what I believe. They'll be able to choose, and it would be sad if they chose not to have some kind of faith. They don't have to practice exactly the way that I do, but faith is a big part of my life, and I want it to be a big part of theirs because it makes life better and easier. So we model it. As far as love of country, there's not necessarily anything posted up around the house or anything, except that there's a little town in Arizona that has a fantastic 4th of July celebration because it's like Mayberry. The whole town comes out. The town parade is literally everybody in the town driving through these streets, having a water fight. They still pray as a town. The town rodeo is attended by tens of thousands of people. It's an experience of patriotism. That's where we celebrate our 4th of July. I want them to know our country has value in the world. I like traveling with my kids outside the country. All my four oldest kids have been outside the country with me. And for all of them, that has made a huge impact. There is a reason people want to come to this country. There are opportunities here that in most places don't exist. You can have a good life in a lot of other places, but I think we have an advantage here because of values our founding fathers established. They've seen the example of service in their grandfathers, and we talk about their service frequently. And as far as love of self is more recent, the lesson I've had to learn, I believe the key to success is happiness, and the key to happiness is self-love. My older kids have been working with a life coach to learn that. I want them to learn they have value, that they're worth loving. Even if nobody else believes it, if they will believe it, it will change their life.
What kind of experiences have you exposed your kids to as they were growing up that were very intentional? What intentional experiences did you provide to your kids to give them passions for the things that you wanted them to grow up loving?
We've always been intentional about family traditions, more of a credit to my wife than to myself. We have Christmas traditions that the kids count on and look forward to. There's things that we do for birthdays that I think that are unique to our family. So there's traditions that we've established that I think help to provide an identity for our family. That knife cuts both ways. What you do can be really good or harmful for your kids. I know I've done both. Since we last saw each other in November, I'm down 20 pounds. My mantra for this year is I make decisions, not excuses. And I recognize that the decisions of how I was eating and how I wasn't exercising were having a negative effect on me. What I didn't realize how powerful an effect it would have on my kids. I set the goal, like one of the little goals to help me start losing weight was I'm not going to drink soda anymore. But within a week, my 17-year-old stops drinking soda. Within not a very long amount of time, I noticed that his Instagram says, I make decisions, not excuses.
Nice.
I never asked him to change it, never told him to change it, doing the same workouts. Eye-opening how quickly they would mimic. Unfortunately, for the first 20 years of my kids growing up, I was busy building businesses, and during that time period, I was doing the best that I could, and I thought what I was doing was for them. I recognize now that doing a little bit less business and a little bit more being the dad would have been way better for them. And so I'm playing catch up with the older kids, trying to be intentional about texting, about showing up, about involving them. And we're trying to create new traditions also for how we talk to each other, handle conflict in our family. Just because you have an established identity as a family doesn't mean that can't change for the better. And I think that's something I'm trying to impress on my kids is it may have been true that for most of their life, dad ate fast food and whatever else. I don't want that to be my identity going forward. I'm changing that. They can have anything they want. The way I've set goals this year is something I'm trying to teach them also is first I decide who I'm going to be with a statement like I am. And if it's I am healthy, then I decide what I'm going to do. I choose to go to the gym every day. And then I identify how I'm going to feel about that. I feel attractive. I feel healthy. I feel more alive. I'm becoming, I'm choosing, and I'm feeling with every single goal that I set so that when I wake up in the morning, I don't have to question whether or not I'm going to go to the gym, exercise, and eat healthy. I've established that identity. I've identified what someone with that identity does, what choices they make, and how I'm going to feel about it. That's been really powerful, and it's brand new. I don't have all of life figured out, but that is something that's been really helpful in the last few months and making some major changes in my life.
Yeah, I loved when you shared that back in November, and I wish I would have folled back up with it, but I'm glad that I'm following up now. I've been trying to build out more of my 2024 and what that's going to look like. It's different than what some people go through what's the word I'm looking for, like the incantations where they're like, oh, I am rich or I am whatever. It's okay. If you're not, your brain knows you're not tricking your brain. If you're telling yourself, I'm going to be this and I'm choosing this, and what does a healthy person do? If healthy is what I'm going to be, then I need to make decisions that a healthy person does. So I'm choosing to make those decisions and I feel good because, et cetera, et cetera. I love the association. Your brain can make those associations and say, I know I'm not healthy now, but I feel this. Go ahead.
We're going back to establishing identity as the Labar family. Visualize, if I could make my family anything, what would it look like? What would the identity of my family be? It doesn't matter. That's not what it has been. Because your kids can be proud of the history you're creating. I think you'll find roots of each of those things somewhere in your family tree. It may not be that they had exemplary lives in every area, but somewhere there were bars that served in the military. So you can connect with that, share stories of that. Whatever values you want to, your faith came from somewhere. And even if that's just you, now you're establishing the identity. We spent 4 days with my kids. We rented a huge house, and that was very intentional. We wanted them to be able to visualize wealth. We spent 4 days there, talk about our past. And so we had somebody that we flew in that did a breathwork session with the entire family. So we led our family through breathwork, and we told them we want to clear some of the history, the trauma that our family has experienced, because we want to put that behind us. We want to create something new. We're not going to leave the house. We rented a house that had a pool, a water slide, pickleball court, putting green, ping pong, basketball, all these things. We didn't want them to leave. We wanted them to be present. So we got the past, present, and then we talked about the future of our family and how the choices that they make right now can be choices that lead to the life of their dreams. They need to identify it. And then I shared my vision board and vision statement with them. A few years ago, after losing my dad, I was in the worst place of my life. That guy could never imagine the things that today's version of me is doing. And I think that's equally true for the guy that I become next year. We're only a few decisions away from living our dreams, but you have to identify what that is and choose to live that identity. That's been powerful for me. If there's anything I want to pass on to my kids, that they have the power already within themselves to change their life.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I have Anthony Vigilante with me. Do you feel like the things that you do as a dad now are more just trying to do the opposite of what that was? How did you figure out, or are you still figuring out, what I'm running away from that I feel was terrible that I had versus what am I running towards to make sure I'm being the intentional father I want to be? I hope that's a clear enough way of summing it up.
Yeah. So you go to the hospital and walk out with this thing, right? And you're like, what the hell? They're really going to let us leave with this thing? We don't know what we're doing. So that's where you start, right? I think we all start there. Seriously? No manual, nothing. You're just going to kick me out of this hospital? You start there and figure it out. Your kids need you in different ways and different stages. Now I'm getting to the final stages of their childhoods. I've been through many stages, and they need something different from a mom and a dad. So I think at the beginning from a dad, besides waking up and, helping, taking shifts, feeding and changing diapers, besides the obvious, which by the way, I was a natural changing diapers because, again, I basically was a dad to my sister who was 13 years younger than me. So I was the one changing her diapers when she was born and babysitting her while my mom worked. And summers, I'd spend the whole summer at my house babysitting my sister. So when my daughter was born, I'm like, perfect. I got experience here. That's all you really need, the necessities. But then as time goes on as a dad, they just need you there. They really need their mom more or differently for sure. But for me, it was just being there. And when they wanted to play with me, when they wanted to do things, right? So that was easy. I'll just be there and had fun with them, be silly. So whenever in the younger years, I was being silly, put the music on, dance, play whatever Legos or whatever they wanted to do, even though it was as boring, could be really boring at times. You were busy sitting on the ground playing with dolls or whatever. So I think it's easy. Just do whatever they want to do, right? And that's what I did. We read a book, before they were born. It was the what do you expect when they're expecting. And then the next book, there was another stage of that. So my wife and I read some books, but that was easy. I think when they get older, they need you more. And I think that's when you want to make sure that you're being intentional and being there the right way, showing up how they need you. And that's when I started reading more books. It was easier for me to be there for my son from the day he was born till now, till today, is find a ball. I don't care what kind of ball it is, football, baseball, basketball, just some cushion ball, a ball that we made out of a piece of paper, and throw it to him. He's happy. To this day, at 13, that's all I do. It's easy. We go in the yard, we go in the house, and we throw a ball. My daughter, when she was younger, it was easy. She had toys, but then it gets challenging. I read a book called Strong Fathers, Strong Daughters, which I recommend for a dad trying to connect with a daughter. I think it's appropriate at any age. It helps you understand how your daughters need you. That was helpful. Reading books, listening to podcasts, being part of a mastermind group called GoBundance, which I know you're aware of. One of the best things about GoBundance is that, or any mastermind group like that, it's not about money, even though we talk about money and investing. It's about being a better person, a better man, family, health, spirituality, and all these things. But being a dad is a big piece of it. So we help each other about, hey, this is what I did. Here's an obstacle I'm going through. And we help each other out about being a dad. That really helped me over the last few years, especially during preteen and teenage years where kids need dads. I think that's really where I jumped in and became more in their face. And fortunate for me, COVID happened, COVID being a terrible thing, because obviously a lot of people got sick and passed away, which was super sad, but some good things came out of it. When 2020, my kids really needed me. And I was stuck in that trap of working in Manhattan, long hours. I leave early in the morning, come home late at night. When they were very, very young, there was times where my wife was just keeping them up long enough for me to tuck them in and say goodnight. Yeah. I never had dinner with them during the week. I only had dinner with them on the weekend. So it wasn't good. Fortunately, I think those early years, they needed me differently. But when COVID happened, it was a real slap on the side of the head. Whoa, this is all happening and they need me and they want me there. Thank God it happened. It made me realize how important it was. And it was awesome. I got to spend, though I was working and busy on my computer, working from home, and they were schooling from home, I got to see them and be with them and have fun with them. And that was amazing. And one thing it taught me was I don't ever want to go back to what I was doing before. I don't mind working 13, 14 hours a day if I need to, but being away from home 14, 13 hours a day is not cool. And there's only a few years left. I said, I am not doing that again, which was part of the reason I left my W-2 in this year.
Yeah.
But I had that out 2020, 2021, 22 of being able to work from home, seeing them come home from school, having dinner, helping with homework, playing with them. It was awesome. Those critical years for my son and daughter. We were always close, but it definitely brought us closer. And I will do everything in my power from this point until I guess they go to college, if they go away. And of course, things will be different. So I have a very small window left. I'm going to do everything in my power to keep this relationship. And not because I have to, not because it's a job, because A, I love it and it's awesome. It's so special to me, kind of selfish. I'm getting more out of it than them. I love it. Spending time with my daughter, spending time with my son. There's nothing I'd rather do than that. But number two, they need me. And I know they need me. When my daughter says something, I see her look at me in a corner of her eye. She's 16. She's going to be cool. And she's going to pretend that she doesn't care. But she 100% cares what I think, what my wife thinks. And I love it. I love when she looks at me to see my reaction. I've learned to have a subtle reaction, not to be angry with my children unless they need it. That's part of being intentional, being there for them. With my daughter being 16, being there doesn't mean being in their face. Let's go. It's just being there. And now I have to wait for her to come to me. Hey, Dad, what's up? She starts talking to me. I'm like, hey, let's go for a walk. Watch a show. You want to go grab something to eat? I wait for her to, when that window opens at 16, at high school, that window, because it's usually she's busy with her work, French, phone. I get it. I was 16 not that long ago in my mind.
In our mind.
But when she comes down in the kitchen, looks at me, I'm like, here we go, game time. And then I talk to her. I try to get something on the calendar with her because it's not easy. Like, hey, what do we do this time? Last year, I took her skiing in Vermont. We went for the weekend, and I'm going to try to do the same thing this weekend. Get something on the calendar. Summer's a little easier. We go to the beach and we have fun. But winters, it's challenging because they're busy with school and other things. But again, my son, it's a little easier because he's a boy and I was a boy. I know what's fun for him. And so, though it's easy for us to just do things and watch football and throw the ball in the backyard, I've been intentional and trying to do things while I can. One of the things I've been doing is taking him to football games. We're Jeff fans. I made him a fan. We're not perfect, and that's one mistake. He's more diehard than I am now at this point. So we go to at least one home game, but I also take him to one away game. It's become our new tradition. This is our third year we've done it. So that's become an awesome weekend for us to get away, just the two of us. It's on him. He says mom and sis are not invited. I'm not the one who said it. He says it. So I'm like, hey, whatever he wants, it's his getaway. Been amazing to go away with him for the weekend at a hotel and go to dinner and explore cities and go to a game. It's our tradition. And I hope that we keep that tradition forever. But that's what being intentional is about, is just do something, whatever it is, have a connection, throw it on the calendar and keep it up. It's so easy to be like, yeah, we're going to do something. And then it never happens. And then you regret it. Again, number one, I'm doing it because I love it. It's selfish to me that I'm spending time with my kids. It's my favorite thing to
go to football games.
And number two, it's good for them. It's good to spend time with me. I'm not perfect, but they like hanging out with me and I'll take it while I can.
Absolutely. I love it. Right now, connecting with them is much more important. Do you wish you started earlier, jumping from the W-2, or was it like a good transition point for it? What are your, looking back on it, would have there been a better strategic way to do it, or do you like how it worked out?
Yeah, I think a few years earlier would have been better. but I was stuck in that mentality. I'm working hard, making money, I'm doing it for the family, right? The other side is your family just wants you around. So I don't know what the right answer is, because it is important to build a future for them and for yourself and have a home. And we were going on vacations. We always knew it was important to go away. We went on multiple vacations as a family, multiple times a year. We still do that. I always had weekends with the kids, but yeah, we lost a lot of time during the week. One thing I did through the years, even though I was busy, is coach my son's sports. I'm thankful for that. It was tough getting out of the city during practice during the week. The weekends were easier, but during the week it was a little crazy. And for the first few years, I would always sign up as an assistant coach because it was difficult for me to commit. Anything that was weekend, I was the guy. I would say to the other coach, either we were dual head coaches or I was assistant. I would say, hey, look, during the week, I'll try my best, but on the weekends, I'm there. If you don't even want to show up, don't worry. I got it. I'm there Saturdays and Sundays. Don't worry. So I always coached since kindergarten, all the way through with my son. I coached football. I coached baseball. I coached basketball. And I'm still coaching basketball. He's in 8th grade, so it's his last year of middle school. This is my last year of coaching, because obviously high school is a whole, it's professional coaches, not volunteers. Our basketball season starts now. Looking forward to our last year of coaching. And I also coached my daughter, but see, my daughter was swim, and they have professional coaches there. Yeah. So I wasn't able to coach my daughter, but her last year of middle school, which is 8th grade, she decided to try basketball for the first time. And I jumped in. The head coach was a good buddy of mine. I'm like, can I be your assistant? He goes, absolutely. So the one time my daughter did play a sport, 8th grade, I jumped in and coached her. So that was fun. She loved it. I loved it. A lot of fun, but she's on the swim team. I never swam, and those coaches are paid coaches.
Yeah, I think that even if for those listening, especially, even if you are staying in the W-2, you're not having the flexibility in the schedule, you've got to find some time in there to be a dad. I always tell people, and I've said it a few times on the podcast, like I see military folks all the time, constantly, and divorces never around. We would deploy all the time, or this, that, or the other thing. Is you are going to affect your children one way or the other, whether in the house or out. So do what you can to affect them inside the house. Be involved, whether it's coaching, taking an extra day off, a vacation, just one-on-one with each of your kids. It's something you gotta be involved. And to me, one of these days I'm going to remember the actual quote for this study. But there was a study that kind of looked at, and this is by no means to take away from moms, so I hope nobody hears it that way. But they looked at a study of households that had a mom and a dad that were present, and the outcome of the kids. A study of just the moms and a study of just dads. And in the studies of the dads alone, and the moms and dads, they were almost exactly the same on how the kids turned out. But if it was just a mom without that father figure there, the kids ended up much more likely to be in jail, much more likely to not pass high school, all the stuff. And I think that it goes to what you were talking about before, like moms and dads are different. I don't care what society says in 2023, 2024. Moms and dads are different, and they have different roles in the family. And the ideal is to have a mom and a dad present who are married and love each other, raising kids. Make that priority is be there with your spouse, have an agreement with your spouse. And another thing that you said that I wanted to jump on was having that mentality of going to work. Your kids need to see that you work. I'd love to hear, my kids are younger. If you could look back at when your kids were younger, how would you have that conversation with them to show them, hey, yes, daddy does work a lot. Like I've tried to relay, like you've seen me take you to Busch Gardens in the middle of the week. That's not something I would have ever been able to do when I was in the military. I take you to Busch Gardens in the middle of the week. Sure, I send an email or two, get on a phone call while we're out there, but we're at Busch Gardens on a roller coaster right now on a Wednesday. How would you go about navigating a conversation like that with the kids?
First, your kids learn from your actions, number one, and number two, from your words, right?
Yeah.
So just what you just mentioned, you're sitting behind the glass well, and they see you working. That is super impactful. Sometimes we don't realize we're teaching them just by being ourselves. Number one, that's probably 80% of it. Number two, with quick things like, hey, dad, let's go play a game. Nope. You know me. I think testing me because he knows I won't. I don't play video games during the day. That's my reminder. And I think that reinforces, that's without saying it, you're saying this is the right way to do things. You want to be successful like dad or more successful than dad. This is how you do it. And then there's conversations that you're having around schoolwork because that is their work right now.
Yeah.
Why don't you do it now so we can have fun later? I always say that. I'm always like, hey, He's, oh, I got time. It's only going to take me a half hour. I'll do it later. So for him, it means he'll do it from 9:30 to 10 o'clock before bedtime, right? And I'm like, wouldn't it be better to do it now and get it out of the way? You know, you're fresh. You're going to give it 110%. You're not rushing it. And then we're going to be able to be relaxed and have fun and enjoy, watch a game, a movie, or play. That's more fun. Those are teaching moments. I've learned, now I don't know if it's my son or a boy thing, but when I try to tell him something, he's not listening. Glosses over, there goes dad. So that is not the way to do it. Maybe there's little opportunities here and there when they're open to it, but a 13-year-old boy, that's rare. Every once in a while we're driving or going for a walk. By the way, a secret hack is taking when your kid's a little older, because now you're at a stage where it's easier. But when you have teenagers, go for a walk. Just go for a walk. That's something I learned during COVID, and I kept up. Just, hey, let's go for a walk. And because my 13-year-old son does not open it. He's the kid who comes home from school. How was your day? Good. What happened? Nothing. Did you learn anything? Yeah. Zero.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, hey, you want to go for a walk? We're walking. My mouth is shut, and he just starts talking. The key is don't interrupt him. All of a sudden, he's talking. I'm like, oh my God, he's talking. Just walk around the block. If I can give a recommendation, especially for a tween or teen who is closed, go for a walk and don't interrupt them. Don't get mad at what they say. Don't judge what they say. Don't give your opinion. Hold your tongue and let them go. Let them know you're listening and say, oh yeah, but let them go. So that's for sure. Sometimes during our walks, we'll ask a question about work. And now he's listening. We're talking. He's listening. We're having fun. I'm not lecturing him. I didn't sit him down. That's my opportunities. With my daughter, it's the same thing. Now that she's older, she's more talkative. She'll come home and in 10 minutes, I'll know everything that happened in every period, every teacher, every friend, every emotion, every drink of water, which is awesome. But even going for a walk with her, I get deeper with whatever's going on. That's two different personalities. I don't know if that's a boy-girl thing or my situation, but some kids are more open and some are closed. And so you have to find out what opens them up. But those are the opportunities we can go in and find a teaching moment. But I would definitely avoid being stern, angry, and yelling, because now you're angry that they just did something. I don't know, on the test, or you just found out they didn't do their homework, or you just found out, oh, by the way, I have a test tomorrow, and I told you at 10 o'clock at night. Things like that's not a time to say, if you're going to be successful, you better straighten your shit up. Forget it. You lost them, right? So don't do that. If that's not the right time to teach them anything. It has to be light, fun. Going to one-on-one dinners is another thing. I take my son and my daughter. Again, everything's trickier with my daughter because she's 16, but that's fine. But having a dinner, sitting down, relax, just the two of you, not the mom, no one else. That's when conversations just pop up. And my daughter or my son will ask a question. I'm like, wow, that's so awesome that they asked me that.
Yeah.
That's cool. And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then, but again, the only way to get your point across, or the only way to help, is to not judge, because they get that enough from us, teachers, friends, the world. Just try to sit there and listen and, oh, okay, yeah. Or you could do it this way. I had success doing it this way. Try it. Like trying to be more nice, friendly, open, easy conversation. I hope I answered your question. It's almost like you were sneaking it in without them even knowing.
Yeah. I've noticed recently I've adjusted how I do his assignments based off of what he's interested in, as opposed to what the book says to do. Because I think he's going to learn a ton more by researching something he's interested in, not something I'm told that he has to absolutely do. So now when he starts asking me questions, it's time to answer him and sit down and let him dig into it. Let me teach you how to research these things. Let's do them and have good conversations about it. I just thought about this as I'm saying it out loud. He's got to write a letter to somebody. Like every week he writes a letter to somebody for homeschool, like literally a physical letter, and then we mail it out. Like grandma and grandpa last week. And so it's fun that we get to do that. Nobody really writes letters anymore. So now my parents have it on their refrigerator.
You have a letter from their grandson.
Absolutely. It's so much fun. They're super interested in Legos now. I've been pondering how I include Legos into homeschool. I just thought of a way. The more he learns how to learn,
the better off I think we are. Because like the more I teach them just how to learn, not what to learn, he's going to figure out what he wants. I don't care what they do in the future. As long as they know how to learn, then go for it. Let's enjoy the time in between. Now that you are working from home, how much exposure to your business do you want to give them? You said that they see you doing some work. They see you doing some different things.
My son was into video games, and I remember going to a GoBundance event, and I'm sitting there and we go over our lives and our pillars. And one thing I was like, oh man, my son, all he wants to do is play video games. And I was complaining about that. Like, this was years ago. And someone turned to me and said, then play with him.
Yeah.
I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, play video games with him. Do you play video games with him? I'm like, no. He's like, play video games with him. And I'm like, oh shit. Yeah. So this was like 4 or 5 years ago. And now I regularly play. I used to play video games when I was a kid. I didn't play for God knows at 30 years. And now I'm a gamer again, playing whatever he wants. He kicks my butt until I learn, and then I start winning. And then he's like, yeah, let's play a different game, Dad. I'm like, all right. And he kicks my butt again. And, he knows Dad plays at night, Dad plays on weekends, whatever, but play video games. So just, what do they like to do? What does your daughter like to do? What's your son like to do? Have a little fun. Watch a show. What show are they watching? I was like, how do I connect with my daughter? And I'm like, wait, what is she watching? She's watching a show called Outer Banks. I'm like, I'm going to watch Outer Banks. All the kids are watching. I don't care. It's a teenage high school show. Let's go. Yeah. I'm watching Outer Banks, Cobra Kai. I'm watching all the shows that the kids are loving right now. We watch a show called Manifest. That's how I connected with my daughter over the last few years, watching the shows she wants to watch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I saw her one day. I saw she started watching a new show. I'm like, all right, I'm going to get into that show. I'm like, hey, you want to watch? Just finding ways to connect movies, shows, walks, video games, whatever they want to do, just do it. Learn to love it.
I am excited to chat with Harvey Yergin today. What would you say are the top 2 or 3 things that you took from your watching your dad that you are now very sure to implement as a dad?
Definitely being present, being there, not missing things. There is an element of family first. My dad was always clearly prioritizing us and my mom over work or anything else. And that's the big stuff.
So when you mentioned family first, tell me what that means to you as you're showing up for your kids. I know you already mentioned that you're always going to be there. You're always going to be at the games, and you're always going to be at the practices and all that. But you also mentioned that you feel like there's another way to be able to go deeper. So what does family first mean to you?
Family first means to me that, first of all, I have a defined set of values or criteria, a list of things that I said are most important to me in order, from 1 to 5 now. And if I say that these are the most important things, then my bank account and my calendar should reflect that exact thing. So if they don't, then I got a problem. And there's probably symptoms of that problem and running tentacles in a lot of different places. So family first to me means that at the top of my list, it says meaningful connections, but to me, that means connections with people like you. It also means prioritizing my relationship with my wife. It means prioritizing my time and relationships with my kids and my extended family, my parents, etc. And when it comes down to choosing, am I going to go on this trip to implement EOS and miss 3 days, or see my son's baseball game, and I'm figuring out what to do about the other thing. To me, that's what family first means. And it's action. It's showing up. It's actually being there. The going deeper, to me, it feels like there is a level of connection available between me and my kids that I haven't tapped into yet. And it could be because they're younger, 13, 10, and 9. But I guess my ultimate goal is I want there to be something different than what me and my dad had, and maybe even have. I want it to be where when they're dealing with the meatiest, biggest, most awkward problems in their lives, that they feel not just comfortable coming to me, but that they immediately think, I need to go talk to my dad about this. And so that, in part, that is a connection that I make with them, sure, but it's also the way I show up. I have to show up in a way that creates that space and safety for them time and time again. And that requires me to remove my ego from a lot of these conversations, which is very difficult, as you might know.
Yes.
Because it's when somebody, even my wife, when they bring you a problem and you're that connected to somebody, at least for me, my initial reaction is to look at that problem and situation through my own preferences, my own beliefs, my own thoughts about how things should be. That's useless. There might be a time for that down the road in the conversation in that situation, when and if advice is necessary. But initially, working to get to a point where when those things are brought to me, that they're not met with ego, they're met with openness and space so that they can express themselves and feel safe. And I think that's how trust is formed between me and them. And it only is formed and maintained over time and repetition. So that has been work and a journey for me. But yeah, I just think that is my goal. So in the terms of fatherhood success to me, if in 20 years, my relationship with my 3 kids is like that, we're talking regularly and they're bringing me their biggest, meatiest issues and they feel safe to do so, I'll feel like I was successful.
How do you work with your kids when you've screwed up or when you see where there's an improvement that you can make to show them like that, to be that example? What does that look like in your life right now?
Yeah, very similar to what you're talking about. Just apologizing and being specific about what I'm apologizing for. And that's new for me, for sure. Maybe the last year or two. It's usually for the same stuff too. It's usually like, I overreacted. I raised my voice when I didn't need to. I said some things that may have been hurtful, usually around this same sort of thing, like just a reaction to something. Yeah. So that's how I handle it. I just keep saying sorry. Yeah.
So what is next for you and your family? What are the next adventures you guys are going on? What's on the agenda for this year for you guys?
Yeah, the big thing this year that we're building around is we're going to Paris for the summer games for 3 weeks, give or take a week. So that's a big muscle movement. That's our first international travel together as a family. So everything else is just revolving around that. So that'll be end of July.
Okay, that's awesome. What made you decide to do that? How did that come about?
It was essentially like sports is also a value of my wife, travel and adventure, same thing. It was really just like me and her saying, hey, wouldn't this be cool? And then deciding, yeah, it would be cool. Let's just do it. Let's just figure out how to do it. And we enrolled the kids and we're like, hey, what do you guys think about this? And they don't really understand what that actually means. They're like, oh, okay. Yeah, I guess that'd be cool. Our oldest actually had been wanting to go to Paris for a long time. So she was like, yeah, heck yeah. And the other two were like, yeah, sure, I guess. So here we go. We're going to Paris.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Yeah, I would love to. So we've got the goal of hitting one more country this year. Both of my kids have been to, I think 7 countries.
Nice.
Diana has only been to 2 because she was just born last year, but she'll be racking them up here soon. So we've got at least one more country we want to hit this year, hopefully more. We're looking at, or I was starting to look at like Hungary, going out somewhere out there, going out to somewhere in Europe. My middle was born in Japan. So we've done quite a few Asia countries.
Yeah. Nice.
So I want to hit a couple more of the European countries that I haven't hit yet, but
yeah,
I don't know what that'll be yet.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. How do you plan those trips out? How do you and your wife plan what that looks like?
Oh man, this is an exceptional trip. So that's not like something we planned before, but what we're doing is, we tried to sit the kids down and say, hey, what do you want this trip to look like? What's important to you? What do you want to do? How do you want it to feel? They're like, I don't know. We're like, okay, yeah, that wasn't a good approach. So then her and I started talking about what is important to us. So very similar to the values exercise, we literally, it wasn't that long ago, we sat down and we just made a list of essentially the values of this trip. What do we want it to look like and feel like, and what experiences do we want to have? We compared those notes and then we can prioritize. We can pick accommodations through that lens. We can pick flights through that lens. I mean, it's a very different flight if you're just trying to be efficient versus we don't want to be rushed. We want to be relaxed. We want a little bit more space. We don't want to leave in the middle of the night. We don't want to sit in economy. Yeah. That all looks different after that conversation. And then probably the biggest thing we did was I just bought Amy a ticket and 5 days in Paris in early February. And so basically she went on a reconnaissance mission. So she could figure out what it looked like when you got to the airport, what customs look like, what it looks like to get a train or to buy tickets for a train. What does it look like to eat in a restaurant or just navigate the streets in Paris? How many people are speaking French? How many people speak English? What can we expect, etc. So she brought all that intel back. And now we're just finished up the last minute pieces on I say minute pieces, but we literally haven't bought our plane tickets yet. We're still waiting for prices, and we're not sure if we're going to fly into Paris or one of the other cities. But yeah, that's what it looks like for us.
That's a lot of fun. I've gone back and forth between let's just figure it out when we get there versus let's plan this out and make sure it goes. And
yeah,
I like both of them. And I feel like every time I really plan out all the details, I feel more stressed about it.
Okay.
Because I'm like, oh man, I got to hit all these things because we said we're going to do this thing. And I don't. And then I get stuck in that gap versus the gain. And it's, but then when I just wing it, I'm like, I don't really know if I got to do enough. So I don't really know the right solution on that. And I have yet to figure it out. But
yeah, I don't either. If it was just Amy and I, and it might be the same with you and your wife, we would just go, we would figure out very little, and we would just figure it out as we got over there. But with 3 kids, maybe you need to figure out a few more details.
Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am actually very excited to talk to Josh Notes.
My job as a parent is that with the hours that I get during the day of quiet and freedom, because they're handed off to the state to come back on that yellow bus that still doesn't have a seatbelt. That's a problem. But I got to do some thought, since I'm the one that has this extra time and this, creative spirit. Like, I got to do some extra time to make sure that the afternoons are structured, not just sports, but other things every day, something. And that if we call that the fire, right? Society, like, I got to pull them out of the fire every day and be like, hey, what did you feel in there? Tell me about it. What can we learn from that? How do we frame that around resiliency, adversity, and values that matter with making micro goals? We've had long-term subs because teachers are overwhelmed. Either they have a child or leave. My kid had 5 months with a long-term sub. I'm not expecting you to learn anything in that class. Let's look at your curriculum, see what you're supposed to learn, and then we're going to get on Khan Academy and we're going to have to make this up. We got to do it at the same rate. It's not more work than being a homeschool instructor, but a parallel level of effort. Most folks don't have the time to put that process in place. Not toot my own horn as if it's perfect, for sure. There's days where I'm swamped with projects, my wife is swamped, and kids watch too much TV, eat Cheez-Its or whatever. But I think we're trying to, and bringing the grandparents in, we're blessed to have those local to us that are coming over, and even that critical 1.5 hours right after school to give them a place to digest what they learned, what they didn't learn, what went wrong. The world is not going to get easier. That's my prediction as a CFO. There's going to be more turbulence than probably any of us can really quite imagine. And that as long as they're safe in relative for the day, like going through some turbulence every day is probably going to train them better than I would be willing to do if I was there trying to instruct them. I couldn't create those lessons if we were homeschooling. This is all post-COVID. Like, you and I are talking about these active, self-aware, entrepreneurial parents. Those parents didn't do that, 90%. And I'm in the area with plenty of resources. And so what we're talking about is a bunch of kids on screens for 3 years straight. There's a lot higher percentage of kids that cannot focus. It is physically impossible for them currently to focus without some extra help beyond what the public schools can provide. They're not going to come back from that being and fit into the public education. And then they're going to get jobs and participate in society. So knowing how to interact is probably an important skill to have that is a byproduct of going to public school. That's my truth.
If you'd like, we can have a call to discuss how I run my homeschool. I was looking at it going, okay, I'm working all day sitting in front of my computer. My son is working 45 hours a week. I'm working, more than that. Then I still spend a couple hours with him to go over all of this stuff. And the more research I did on homeschool stuff, I was like, not only can I probably get all of the education in, plus some, in the time I'm already helping him after school, I'll have access to him. I'll show him business stuff, bring him out, take him to real estate ventures. Let's at least give it a try for 1 year. Right now in 4th grade, not ruining his life by doing it for 1 year, maybe 2 to 5th grade. Now is the time to try it. Let's see what I can do. Your son's 10 years old, probably in 4th grade.
We're peers. And I think if that ripcord would be pulled, like, to me, based on what I experienced middle school at the time to pull it, those are the wrong things that we talked about. But there's so much to be learned outside of that environment. I think there's a lot they are learning, but also a lot of wasted time around other kids who aren't being trained to be disciplined.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I saw a lot of disciplined kids lose it later on. You never know.
I put that word out there, but I don't mean perfection. I don't mean
you get ace. The ability to think about what they're doing and make the right decisions means more than perfection.
I'll give you an example that Nathan brought home that they turned into a conversation around government and politics. And you're going to be like, what is, so what's the one thing he will share with me every day afternoon is like, what'd you guys do at recess? Right. And most parents are like, what'd you do at recess? Okay, cool. I'm like, what'd you do at recess? He's like, I played football. Tell me about the teams. Okay, here's the teams. I'm like, oh, great. Like that, it's kid Charlie. He started his own team. Okay. How do you start his own team? How do you do that? He's like, there's like this schedule, this one kid keeps it and you gotta, and I'm like, interesting. And then he's like asking me like, what are the rules for onside kicks or whatever? So I'm asking about the formation because this happened in the past 2 weeks. And of course he wants to talk about his catching the touchdown and the whatever.
Of course.
Turning to accusations of cheating and a near fight made the block. The other kid scored. His team celebrates. He's leading the celebration. The kid comes up and tries to slam him. He did what I told him to do in that environment, which is you need to just remove yourself from the situation. I grew up as a wrestler. I'm sure he knows what he could do, but I'm like, avoid conflict at all costs in these public environments. That kid went to the next kid, got into a fight and went to the principal's office. That's an example of extraordinary discipline that, like, again, maybe our dads would have been like, you're just coming home until you... In this environment, kids have weapons and people on the internet will sit and plot. I'm like, hey, just avoid the fight. Just avoid it. There's no winning. You may have to have one day, and we'll talk about that when you're a little older. Anyways, that was an example of taking a comment and turning it into a discussion on self-governance. And sure enough, because of that fight, they shut down football 2 days. So you touch on a couple of things that are interesting, and I think it involved from business, but then shifting it to parenting, right?
Oh, yeah.
Coaching. So I have been told several times in my life from different people, some that I knew really well, some that I didn't know really at all, that they're like, you're a coach. Like, you got to be a coach. And I don't think I really took that seriously until the last 3-4 years when Phil and I had to debate this back and forth. And I was like, no, but like I do it this way. He's that's coaching. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm a coach. And but we say we're CFOs. I'm like, well, why can't we do both? We got to nail the CFO part first. But I'm like, we do. But it's allowed us to think bigger and broader. And you guys have been at ADPI, a good example of growing a community and courses. And so I think that's part of where we're heading and bringing the product down and digestible to an audience that maybe can't afford our CFO. But more, I wanted to say that I've embraced this in the past 15 months. I've been a caddy and a coach for my oldest, but I'm also now helping my daughter. She's a gymnast. She also plays soccer. I signed up to be an assistant coach for her soccer team. I took on head coach for my son's basketball team, my younger son, Gavin, who is going to be 6, but they're 5. And we ran that, like yesterday was our award ceremony. The Giraffes is the name of the team because they're tall and they keep their heads up. So I've been having a lot of fun with this, and it's also led me to a little bit of family history. So cool family history fact is my great uncle through marriage was Red Auerbach, who was the famous coach of the Boston Celtics. He broke the color barrier in basketball, did a lot of things, created the three-pointer, like changed the game. And I got to meet him briefly when I was a kid, didn't really recognize it, but I've known about him excellence in coaching and what that can do to create great teams. And so this past year, I've really dove into and taken that extra, not just I'm going to sign up to be the coach, but I'm going to do work in between practice and the game, in between the game and the next practice, to really think about how to build teams. And if I can do it with 5-year-olds, imagine when I can adults. Really cool.
No, and for sure. One thing I've said a bajillion times, and I should coin them trademark, is as dads, I think part of our role, especially like entrepreneurs, when I'm trying to talk to an entrepreneur about what it means to be a dad, it's difficult to nail down being a CEO. There's a lot of different things that you're doing as a CEO. Some of them, it depends on what kind of company you're doing, what kind of meetings you're supposed to be having. Are you the CEO always in their office with the door shut, writing all these things down and trying to come up with all these things and hand all these things to the COO? Or are you the CEO that's out there casting vision? There's different ways to do it. Like there's different ways to be a dad and run your family. So as a dad, my job, and I tell my boys, is to make them better men than me. My job for my daughter is to represent what it means to find a man better than me. You need to find a man better than me. And that's my goal. Because obviously, no matter what 2024 teaches us, She'll never be a man. That's just not going to happen. It's not physically possible. If you find a man better than me, then we're on the right track. Our job is to make our businesses absolutely better as possible. Like, we should be looking for the most growth. We should be looking for the most ROI, the best systems to be able to put inside of our business to make sure that it's running well. Eventually, I don't want to be the CEO of my kids anymore. I want my kids to be like my own little businesses. I want to raise them to be better CEOs of their own life, where I could just be on the board. That's not going to happen without the right coaching. It's not going to happen without those right conversations, just like it doesn't happen inside of your business without actually mentoring the people that are working for you. I'm trying to correlate my skills as an entrepreneur can apply as a dad, and how my skills as a dad can apply as an entrepreneur. It can correlate if we're looking, I need to coach my kids. I need to coach my employees. But no, they need to know where things go in the business, because they're not thinking about the large view of the entire company. Just like my kids aren't thinking about what's best for the family. Their job is to be a kid. But coaching is important and something I've always loved, especially with my boys. I will for sure with my daughter, but she's 10 months old. There's only so much coaching I can do. She talks back to me a lot, and I don't know why I haven't gotten to her level yet. But yes, I completely agree on the coaching side. I love being able to do all of that. You look like you have something to say.
I think what I found, we have boys and he's your oldest, right? We're pretty much at the same point. And I think what I found is that some luck and what they're pointing at a young age, all three of my kids are interested in sport. They're willing to have conversations they wouldn't about other parts of life, business even. My oldest was interested in, my daughter's interested, the youngest doesn't want to hear about it. But if I can frame things out, learning exercises, hey, we made a mistake. We have a saying here, right? Who makes mistakes? Everybody. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like those things we can just reinforce and not allow a lot of these ills of society, of this false facade of perfection and wanting everything that everybody else has and all these other things. Like, we can point this out in sport and we can do some comparison. Hey, Johnny on your team has the best jump shot. So the best thing for the team is to pass him the ball if he's open, even if that means you don't take as many shots. Now, maybe the 5-year-old's not going to get that, but I tell you, these giraffes, you'd like to watch them on. Yeah, they understand passing makes winning, not ball hugging. If you can teach that to 5-year-olds, that was the goal. Kids having emotional stuff. Golf, you and I talked about this. There's a lot of emotions. I played at a high level, competed in a USGA championship. I had the chops to go play D1. I chose to go to Maryland to go to the business school instead, but I played in the Maryland Open. I've won the Maryland Open as a caddy, seeing near the top of the amateur game, and teach coach and caddy for it. It's a privilege, but also a great opportunity to reflect on it. And I've had to learn the lessons of, don't bring it up on the car ride home. Nobody wants to talk about it. Win, lose, or draw. Let it soak in. Tying these conversations. It takes discipline to find that 15-minute window before bed and say, let's talk about this. Hey, you set out these goals for the year. What are we going to do to get those? Where does that fit into your calendar? Let's frame this out. Did we hit it or not? Nathan shifted to wanting to practice 3 sports in the same season. Let's fit this into this puzzle. Where does golf fit in? We're lucky to have a basement, practice golf. It fits in the morning. When my friends want to play, I'd rather play with them, but I'd rather make sure I practice my golf, or else I don't feel good on the weekend for my tournament. So I'm going to have to wake up early, which means that we got to go to sleep early, which means we got to put our routine in place even earlier to be prepared for it. So these are how I find the kind of coaching fits into parenting, fits into teaching the kids to tell themselves their own story about what success looks like. And there's no, you have to be a professional at any of this, or get a D1 scholarship. There's no pressure from me. It's just, hey, this is a medium, us to talk about these. And if you decide next week you don't want to play golf anymore, that's fine. You have a skill that you're going to be pretty good at for the rest of your life, which is nice, but I'm hoping you can apply these lessons to other aspects of life. What do you got on that topic?
Dude, you and I have had calls about golfing with the kids, and because I've struggled a lot on I haven't had the lovely skill set that you have of having been a caddy and playing. I need to steal as many ideas as I can. I'm going to ask you multiple questions on all of that. Golf in particular is one of my son really likes. Just the other day, we had another one of those Under Armour emails. We're getting ready to start that season and get him into the Under Armour tournaments. You haven't touched your golf clubs in a while. Do you want to chase medals and do everything to win, or do you just want to enjoy the sport? If you want to enjoy the sport, that's fine. Let's enjoy the sport and have a good time. But that means you can't be angry when you don't win first place. You can't have both. And he's, no, Dad, I really want to win medals. As you were applying juxtaposition of life lessons and golf lessons, how are you setting the stage for those conversations on the course and later on? How are you setting the stage in practice for those life lessons, not just staying focused on the sport?
Okay, this thinking has evolved. I did some first teaching for the past 15 years. So I've got to experiment with this before it was my kids. Nathan's been playing competitively for this will be like his 6th season. So he's been doing it since he was 5. And I had a lot to learn. But I figured out there are 3 characters to play early in the game of golf unless you hire somebody else to do it. You're going to be their parent, number 1, and number 2, golf is not a sport they can do themselves. They can get the ball at the driving range, but you can't play, especially in the environment that you and I have seen where it gets really competitive, really young, without a caddy. So you need a caddy. If you don't really know research, the tendency is to be a coach when you need to be a caddy. Golf is not a sport where the coach is in your ear. It will do the opposite of what you're hoping for. Most parents try to be coaches. So we'll have to have a longer conversation on that, hopefully when I'm down there playing some golf with you guys. They're going to need a coach to get better in this sport. I took on that role because I'm skilled enough. That was the most challenging one. I have since given that responsibility during the winter season to a local PGA professional who's got a whole indoor academy thing. And it's great because I stop in that mode. And there's psychologists, depending on how your kid, I don't have a degree, but golf is an in your head game. We've had a lot of conversations about, hey, I tripped and fell through this myself. I didn't have a coach. Just me and this other kid beat the earth for thousands of hours. That's how I got good. Now that I recognize it, I've become a much better golfer because of having to teach him how to do it the right way. So there's some systems out there. Decade Golf teaches older people, but how do you boil it down for the youth? My business partner, Bert, says, he used to be a soccer coach. He says, you can only tell kids 3 things at a time. That's a good reminder. Anytime we're working, it's 3 things. One might be, this is what we need to undo, the foundation to change, and this is what we're reaching for. And so that might be the whole thing we work on for a week. But I have gotten him to agree that based on his goals, like here is the week of exercises we're going to do. It starts with how many days a week do you think we should be doing something to accomplish the goal to come in top 20 in the world tournament? He qualified for it a couple times with COVID. We didn't go. So whatever. He's never actually made it there, but I'm like, do you want to just show up? Or show up and be where the fish bite? Golf's not a sport. Even if you're really good, you don't dominate and win every time. There's a lot of percentage luck in play. We've got 3 off seasons that are a month long where I don't do any coaching, caddying, anything. If he signs up for the other coach in the wintertime, he can go to it. I drop him off, hang out with the other dads, but I'm not talking to him about it to create some breathing room. And on the back end of those, when that off season occurs, is okay, now reminder, this is what you said last season you wanted to accomplish. Is this still what you want? It has to be from the right place. It can't be for me. It has to be for you. And then weekly, like what that ends up looking like, just to break it down, is 1 9-hole round, 1 indoor 9-hole session, 1 short game wedge work session, 1 putting specific, and 1 physical performance. He's working on speed training, trying to, he recognizes that his weakness is he doesn't hit as far as the best kids. And that would shift from him hitting woods and long irons into hitting wedges. Because we've done all this tracking of this data, it's okay, it just need to get closer to the hole. So my dispersion is tighter and I'll have birdie putts instead of birdie chips. His goal this year is to caddy for himself. By the time he turned 12 around here, the parents aren't allowed to caddy anymore. So I'm not waiting. I said, hey, you're going to start caddying for yourself. And the goal is to win while caddying for yourself. Training wheels are off. I'm just a spectator. We can talk after the round. There's certain events I can caddy in, but many I can't. That's what we're preparing for now. I got a book for you. I'm not the author. And I bought this book several times for him and my daughter. It's called Mental Toughness for Teenage Athletes. The words are big, but it walks them through everything we're talking about, mental stuff, processing, understanding value versus comparing to others. Golf is one of those where the leaderboard is permanent. If you're in the bottom, like I felt feeling dead last in a United States Open qualifier and been like I suck. Or at least today I did. But for me, it takes about 1 day and my brain's like, all right, I suck. Let me break that round down. Here are all the places where it was weak. Here's how I'm going to change my practice regimen and I'm going to go back out there and sign up for the next one. That's how my brain works. But that's not how a 10-year-old brain works. Probably sulking longer. They feel
emotionless logic.
So I think if you're going through this exercise with your son, I would encourage you to stretch those goals out so there's time. Ultimately, we're trying to help them have delayed gratification by putting in work. Maybe counter what you're doing prior to the round. For me, a lot depends on how I roll into the parking lot. I don't know how far you got to drive. We drive for a while, Northern Virginia for some. We pull out of the driveway and I'm like, hey, bud, what's the number 1 goal? And he's like, have fun. Okay. Number 2 is I want to set your expectations for what it's going to be like when we get there. We're going to get there, do chipping, putting, driving range. We'll have this much time. Make sure you're thinking about the keys to your chipping. Strengthen your grip, weaken this, put on your back foot. I'm driving, so I'm not showing him. It's just reminding him what we worked on. Do you have any questions? No? Okay. Put on a 7-minute meditation. Okay. We hear some deep belly breaths, bud. He forgets eating his Cheetos. All right, bud, one more. That's over. What do you want to listen to? Red Hot Chili Peppers. Great. We rock out on the highway. I'll let him stay quiet. We're about 10 minutes out. I'm going to put on another 7-minute meditation. Put one on, roll in. What's our number 1 goal? Have fun. By remaining calm and being kind to myself. It's great. I'll get everything set up. Go hit that putting green. We've gone through this for years and a lot of trial and error in that, but that is working pretty well to get him out into a chilled out instead of goal oriented. Midweek is if we haven't played the course, I'll print up this caddy book, and it's not even that important because their tees are close. You're going to hit driver and whatever you have. Just helps him feel he's mapped it out. Being military, all the day in advance. I'll be like, okay, there's a creek on number 4. It may not be a driver. If you get to the tee first, wait for me before we even pull a club. Okay, got it. So I'm really trying to teach him a caddy for himself. That's my goal more than being his caddy. I had 5 years as a professional caddy.
I love it. I took 2 pages of notes on the golf stuff. I can't wait to get him back on the course. My wife and I, after last season, because he was inside his head and I didn't know how to help. So we had almost even thought about, well, let's just let him have fun for a season. Like just nothing but fun for a season, whether it's no golf at all, or whether it's we just go become a member at some course and just let him go play around with me and just have golf with dad. Not worried about competition, not in his brain. I want to give you another nugget. Nathan was having the same problem. Really intense, to the same thought, breaking my heart. He was going into 8 years old, and it was happening when we were just going out to play these 9 holes. And it was because I'm like, okay, bud, right, we're to the course. I'm going to give you this many strokes, right? And I was making it a competition between us. Then I'm like, excellent idea. Dad competes in 4-ball formats. We're on the same team. Go play our own individual balls. You need to put everything out. Yeah. But the 4-ball is the format where you count whichever one's best. So it's this team effort. That changed the paradigm. So now all our practice is 4-ball. We're team, Notes or team LeBar. Like, we're going to go out there and we're on the same team. What does it take to be a good teammate? Well, you got to have a good attitude. You're dropping your head and I'm still caddying for you. That's pulling me off my game. I can't make my birdie putts if I'm thinking about you crying over here because you hit it to 30 feet when you expected 20, which was unrealistic. That changed how we practiced. We took a psychological evaluation provided by folks at US Kids. It showed what happens when we get stressed out together. Like how our profiles of psychology map together. I need to shut up and he needs space. We've come up with key words where he says, Dad, I got it. That means shut up. I'm going to walk on the course, and then he's got to invite me back in to be his caddy. Sometimes he's made bad decisions because he didn't bring me back in as his caddy, but I think that's okay. That's part of this process. And if we're doing this 15, 20 times a year, there's a lot of kind of like things that we learn from that. And then some days it just goes really well where he doesn't have to fire me at all. He's firing me and trying to escape. That's where we're at today. There'll be tears this year on the course, but it's very normal. I didn't get into the game until older, but what I see and hear from all the other parents I talk to is like, everybody's going through it. Maybe some kids don't do it in front of other people. Maybe some only do it at home. Some don't emote, but feel terrible. And parents go, it's not for the faint of heart. Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am very excited to talk to Tony Johnson. You did mention that like your dad wasn't the one to go out and play sports with you or do things like that, but you mentioned to me before that sports was very important to you and your family, and every one of your kids are in sports. Were you always in sports, and is that why you put them in there? And then how much do you actually get to participate in your kids' sporting events and stuff like that?
So yes, and that's something I think I'm learning still to this day. So yes, I am highly involved in my kids' sports as far as soccer goes. I've coached all my kids, starting with my son from when he was 3, coached him till when he was 14, and have coached all my daughters from when they were 3, put them in soccer. The 14-year-old still plays. I've stopped coaching her because she grew out of rec. It's all rec that I was coaching. And then my 11-year-old, she did not like it, so she quit about a year ago. And my 6-year-old is still playing, though I don't know. I think that I was coaching up to 4 of them at a time, which was straining on me and my wife's time after work.
No, I bet.
And that being said, I also feel like it's almost like I'm choosing this for my children just because I love soccer so much. Getting feedback from my youngest and my 11-year-old, the reason I let her quit, I don't think she liked it. She didn't excel at it. And the 6-year-old really is not excelling at it. So I told her, let's go through this season. If you don't want to do it, let's go. So where with the older one, the first one where I'm saying I'm still learning as a father, even once he graduated through on me, I put him into a premier travel team. He didn't really have the desire to pursue it. So we would go on travel tournaments, leave my family, just me and him going. He didn't have the passion that all the other kids on the team had, no drive for it. And then I forced him to try out for his high school team. He didn't make it as a freshman. He didn't make it as a sophomore. He didn't even want to try out as a sophomore. I forced him, and that basically broke the camel's back, and we allowed him to quit 3 months ago from continuing, because I think that was so traumatic for him to not make a JV team as a sophomore after playing his whole life, that he just completely hated it after.
Especially if his heart wasn't in it, I'd imagine it's harder to make the team anyways. So if your heart's not in it, you're not going to have that drive and that willingness to go that extra mile that you need to show that you're putting in that effort. Happier
child since we've allowed him to quit that and trying golf now, but he's a little late to the game. But either way, I'm just happy he's finding something he's enjoying.
Yeah. And there's honestly with the golf side of the house, there's no real late to the game, especially if they're athletic. They can get picked up pretty quickly, especially at high school golf. You can pretty much I don't know much about the high school he goes to, obviously, but high school golf can usually tend to make it. But
we'll see. Yeah, he just entered the tryouts. So there was a couple of people at the thing, and then they did the tryouts. There were 25 kids showed up for 6 positions.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
So we'll see. I don't know if it's as easy as we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah, no kidding. Yep. But I'm told, though, that girls' golf for college is like phenomenal because they have almost nobody takes the scholarships. So they always have these extra scholarships for women's golf going into college. And it was like, that might be a good idea for me.
It's good to know.
Yeah. Especially since you have 3 girls.
That's right. I get these girls in golf.
Yeah. Get them in golf. Help pay for college. What kind of conversations and lessons did you learn through the forcing of your son to go into soccer and then finally deciding to just let him make the decision to jump ship? What was the lead up to that, and what was your thought process before and after that process?
The premise of him doing that and the premise of me forcing him to stay in is not that it was forcing soccer. It was, I've always, my way of growing up and how my parents raised me were, you get into sports, it makes you make friends, it keeps you out of trouble, keeps you from the bad groups in schools. So I brought that along as a parent myself, that thought, that mindset. So it's always been my thought that, hey, stay in sports, stay out of trouble. So it's not that I forced soccer. I would always say pick another sport. He just never picks another sport. He'd rather do no sports, I think, and he's got a solid head. He doesn't seem to be getting in any trouble, but I also know that there's a social component to it. And so where you make these teams, you build good, solid friendships with those teammates and deeper connections, get you into that more popular group in school. So that was just my thought process. And normally kids that are in sports are more apt to stay out of trouble than the kids that aren't in sports that have nothing to do all day that then can get into trouble. So that was really the thought process. But with him, I have learned, as long as we're having these conversations, having open communication, that's really what's important. Keeping an open line of communication with each other, making sure I'm getting through to him, guiding him, listening to his problems, making sure I'm staying in touch with him so I can be a part of him being honest and upfront with me so he doesn't go down a bad path and get in any trouble. That's what I'm trying to do, at least.
Yeah. Oh, that's, I think, going to be a constant effort, especially right now. I would imagine. I remember my high school years. It was one of those that was always the time where you saw the late junior high, early high school, really seeing that transformation. Boys are getting testosterone in their body and kind of, here it goes. Let's see what happens. A lot of my friends were very wild. And I remember a lot of crazy things going on. Thankfully, I was only minorly wild, not the very wild side. But so as you guys were communicating about the sports and what your desire was in sports, how did your son communicate back to you his lack of desire, and how did those conversations go?
That was the thing. Multiple times we went through it each season. As the season ended before another one signed up, I would say, do you want to continue it? Let's have this discussion. What would you do instead? If I pull you out of this, you have to do something else. So what else would you like to do? If not, I'm going to sign you back up for this. But you don't want to do this, no problem. Let me know what other sports you're going to do. And that's the discussion that we had each time. And each time he wouldn't select anything else. So I would sign him up for that. And he would dislike it until he got out there. He would finish practice for the most part and games and say he enjoyed it. And he had made great friendships. I was seeing benefits of it. So just after this last time of not making the high school team as a sophomore, which the team is extremely good. They make state finals every year. So I get it. And he's a quiet kid. So the reason they said he didn't make the team is he was too quiet, wasn't vocal enough. Either way, once you see that there's really no path for him to continue, he's gained what he's going to gain out of it and go try something else. Once I was very clear that he had no future in trying to pursue anything else with it, no real point in making him pursue it any further.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, especially if he doesn't have that drive, then because you guys, boy, I just heard a statement yesterday. I wish I could remember what it was. It was something along the lines of perseverance and drive will beat talent if talent doesn't have drive, or something along those lines. And it was like, okay, even if they're not the most talented, if they've got the drive to be able to do it, they could still succeed, especially if the others aren't putting that drive and effort into it. But yeah, if there's no passion there, then let's move on to something else. Let's do something you're going to enjoy. I think that's a good lesson for life in general. If you're not passionate about what you're doing, then you might as well try to find something you're passionate about.
And the main driver for all of this for me is to build self-confidence of this kid.
Yeah.
So you want to build their self-confidence. These years are so hard for all children when they're going through high school. There are so many challenges and there's so many expectations. Other kids, you're trying to fit in. You're going through these awkward transformations as a person. Puberty is a difficult process for yourself to go through with all acne, the changes in the body. You go from child to all of a sudden, all these different things happening. You're hearing about different kids doing different things in school, much more advanced than you're doing. They're dating girls. Maybe you're not dating girls. They're more outgoing. Some people are getting really strong. You might not. Some people are growing really tall. You might not be growing really tall. And so then there's people are picked on for the way they dress, the way they look. Yeah, there's a ton of different challenges, and to roadmap yourself through there. The most important thing is maintaining confidence in yourself, individuality, not trying to be a follower, but being happy with what you have and being confident in what you can do and how you can be as a person, and not following people down bad rabbit holes.
What was one big takeaway you had leaving Fambundance?
I thought it was very nice. Fambundance, I would say it was out of, I think, my family's element a little bit. So my wife was uncomfortable. She's just not interested in going to those. She would rather go to a concert and listen to music than go sit and listen to a speaker. She did pretty good, and my kids did pretty good. What I would say is, I think for anyone, it's a great experience if they have kids. There were a lot of things in there I'm thankful that I was already doing, that we were talking about. So my kids, I have them set goals quarterly. We go through those goals, make sure they're achieving those goals. We have weekly family meetings, sometimes bi-weekly family meetings, where we sit and we have open communication. We have a lot, family values, family core values, a lot of things. But if you don't have those things, man, this is a great roadmap to help you establish those things. And the family togetherness of it, I feel like we were at a disadvantage in the events with the 4 kids against families with the 1 kid. So that was the biggest takeaway for me, being a competitor in all facets. We all need to strive to balance life. The biggest complaint I hear or regret of anyone that's successful in business is they've typically put their family or their spouse on the back burner to be successful. So once you start to reach some level of success, make sure that you get that balance back at some level, or else you're going to live a life of a lot of regret. Because
For sure.
it doesn't matter how much money you make in life. It's all, you're making the money to make a better life for your family. So if you lose your family, you don't have much purpose in life. So make sure you always, keep knowledgeable of your family's needs. Make sure that you're addressing their needs some way, shape, or form. And make sure you don't lose your family or any part of your family to achieve success.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Thank you so very much for coming in to listen, and I'm really excited to have Daniel Ramsey on the podcast today. So you mentioned fun is a big part of it. You have your core values and you have your traditions. What are some of your other traditions that you like? You mentioned the family Christmas, and then Mondays from 9 to 11 being the family planning. What are some other traditions that you guys have that help make sure that the family is staying as a strong family unit moving forward?
One thing that we kicked off, which I love, and I got this from another father, by the way. So again, these kind of interviews, they're so impactful because you get to synthesize all these ideas and take what you like and throw away the stuff that you don't. So anything that I'm telling you it's not like my traditions or my habits or structure that we have for our family. It doesn't matter that they're mine. What matters is, or you have some equivalent to it. So I take my kids on a trip every year. So my middle daughter last year, she wanted to go live on a farm. So we milked goats and went to a flower farm and did an Airbnb experience in Northern California. My oldest, I'm taking her to New York this coming year in 2024. We're going to go to the Big Apple and check it out. We do vacations. We do things where the focus is togetherness and fun. So this summer, we're taking our family up to Tahoe. We'll rent a couple cabins, 2 or 3. And my wife and I were thinking, we're like, normally most families go on vacation and they eat and drink and hang out. I'm like, hey, what would make this the most like fun version of a summer camp that we could ever? And we came up with like family games. So we're like, okay, we're going to get the axe throwing. We're going to get the sock throwing. We're going to actually make games and have an award and like just create some more vibes. We try to focus on not buying doodads for the kids. We're not perfect at this. Our Christmas gift to the kids this year is going to be 3 bikes. So we can all go and ride bikes together. And they have bikes now, but between the cabin and our house, I think some bikes are up at the cabin and some are at the house. And I was like, okay, we just need a new set of bikes so that there's a set of bikes at the cabin, there's a set of bikes at the house, and we can ride bikes together a lot. And so that's been difficult. I think one area that I struggle is I do work a lot. So I don't want to sit here and say that everything is perfect. In an ideal world, I would work probably 25 to 35 hours a week in the business. I'm at 40. I work a normal 40-hour work week. And so I'm working towards how to take more time for the family throughout the week. And the reason is because they're in the middle age right now where I can still influence them. I caught my oldest really checking it in, phoning it in with math. And her excuse was, I'm just not good at it. So I just focus on doing 30 minutes a day, and whether or not I get to it or I don't get to it, my goal was 30 minutes a day. So that's fine. The problem with that is she's not even close to being at standard for math. And so I'm not super worried about her being at standard, but I'm really focused on skill stacking. So if she can't do standard 1, then it's impossible for her to do 2 and 3 and 4. And guess what? You need to be able to do basic geometry in life. Even if you use computer systems to do it, you need to understand it in order to figure it out. And I think they need me right now more than the business needs me. Or, not more, but in a way that I think I can slow down the business hours and focus on the family hours, and I'll have the same kind of dividends from both, if that makes sense.
So you mentioned earlier in the conversation being very intentional with your calendar and again, the skill stacking and all the stuff. So what kind of things do you think it would take right now to skill stack and manage the calendar to be able to spend those extra hours that you would like to with the family as opposed to being in the 40-hour work week?
Yeah. What's interesting is we have a family calendar, and this is, if you're listening right now, I think this is one of the best things that I ever did. We have one of those huge calendars, the rollout ones that like have an entire year out. Every year.
The Jesse Itzler one? Is it one of his?
Sees, but that's where I heard it. Yeah. I was watching him on stage, and he's a calendar. I was like, that's a brilliant idea. And we'd never done that before. We'd always had an electronic version. But what I realized is that not only does my wife, but some of our kids, they visually see things and they need to feel like they write it down to own it. And so we've got a calendar, we got the family calendar that syncs up. We have visibility into each other's calendar, notes, and files. One of the traditions that we have is we go to Tahoe, we are in our cabin, and we write out our vision boards for, and you ask like, how much does my family and the business intersect? What I'm trying to do is create habits that as they get older, they just keep them going. And these habits, things like setting goals and vision for your future and reviewing how successful your year was, what you failed at, what you learned. And so we spend basically from the day after Christmas to the second or third day after New Year's in Tahoe working on these boards. It's just a quiet time for us to all reflect, for all of us to write and think and draw and put magazines on paper. And so we've done that since the girls were little and couldn't even write. And I'm excited about this year because the baby will have her first, she'll be 3. We try in that space for her to pick out pictures and put them on the thing, color. But yeah, that's probably one of our more powerful family traditions.
Yeah, we're going to Fambundance in January. By the time this comes out, we'll have already gone to Fambundance and back. But we're going to Fambundance, and that's one of the things that we did at our first Fambundance event was do that family board. And my wife and I, was the first time we did it, and we didn't really know quite how to do it for the family, and our kids were still pretty young. I mean, you just saw my boys are both pretty young, they're 9 and 5. It's a little bit different to try to bring them into some of this stuff, but I can't wait to do it again. Like, I've been wanting to do it more and to do it there and around other families who are doing it so I can see other kids that are doing it and driving towards it. I'm really looking forward to that experience, especially watching the 9-year-old come out of his shell a little bit and interact like that.
I think if there's one place to start is we were in a GoBundance thing, and most people in the room, there's a guy up on stage and he said, how many people in here have core values for your company? Like 60, 70% raised their hand. Then how many people have core values for your family? And there was 2 of us that raised their hand. Actually, 2 of us who had their hand left up when he said, do you have it printed and prominently displayed in your home for your kids to see and for you to... And so I find probably the most important thing that you can get from this conversation is have a set of values and realize that they can be changing and evolving. My wife is like, kindness really matters to me, being kind. And I'm like, okay, that's not one of mine, but she wants to have kind children. And I don't think there's anything wrong with them.
Yeah.
I've never looked at somebody and said, your core values suck. Whatever's right for you is what's right for you, right? Whatever those are. I would say that is probably one of the most important moves you can make as a dad or as a father. I love the trips. The daddy-daughter trips are super important and powerful. Our annual planning calendar process for reviewing goals and what the week looks like and just getting self-evaluated. How am I doing as a dad and a husband and what's going on in your world? Date night. One of the misses that I see a lot is parents not staying connected with each other and not spending the money to have a date night every Friday or every Saturday night. And I'm like, you get a babysitter. It's not that expensive. These things, like
getting a babysitter is a lot cheaper than a divorce. That's right.
Yeah, fact. And I think the other thing about the vision, values, and all this stuff is when you get to discover what your true core values as a human are, and your spouse's core values And then together you say, this is what our family stands for. This is what really matters to us. I think that creates something that is not purchasable. It creates a joint mission, so to speak. It can create a role responsibility. I think that's a big thing that my wife and I have. She's in charge of every second after 5 or 6 o'clock at night. Like I get from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 or 6 at night. And from that time on, and it's all calendared, by the way, weekends, evenings, mornings, like my role there is to be a partner and a father. And so role responsibility, everybody being on the same page, it's just like a business. That's what's crazy. People don't get it. Yeah. It's like creating culture in your family. And most people just let it be whatever it is versus articulating it. And that's always surprising to me.
Yeah, that's something that stuck out to me when we started to implement EOS in our company. It was like, God bless, why don't I do this with my family? Like, I should totally have great core values with my family. We talked about the vision board stuff, but like going back to the true, because that first time we did that, and really was the only time we've done it as a family, was like 4.5 years ago at a Fan Abundance event, something like that. And it was like, this is not, that's not often enough. I need to review these things like at bare minimum annually, but hopefully quarterly. I'm looking at these things and making sure there's still, our family is still beating at that drum. And I think that's, anybody that's listening should very well take heed of that advice and jump on that and learn from my mistake of not doing it, but Daniel's success of making sure that happens and keeping that rolling.
You know, what's interesting is that with my 10-year-old, what happens is we don't have to break the relationship when she misbehaves. And it's because she lies, which all kids do. We catch her and I can say, I love you. And when we all agreed, we all talked about it. This behavior is not okay. This is what we don't do. And so I get to point to the behavior that we've all agreed to. Like, she's agreed to it. Signed, delivered, sealed. She's agreed to it. And so that shifts everything from I'm the father who's an authoritarian, like, this the rules, you broke the rules. I don't have to do any of that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I've already got a perfect spot to put it up and get it framed. I really appreciate the push on that side for me as well. So hopefully that resonates with some other folks who are listening, because it's super powerful. And we have a borderline of family motto that I've been saying to my oldest since he was little, and it's always been stay calm and work through the problem. Doesn't matter what the problem is, you stay calm and work through it, and we can get through the other side of it. It's not written down anywhere. It's not anything. And it's just something fun that we say to each other. And it started really with me wrestling with my son. And hey, you're stuck in a position that you're not comfortable with. You're 3 years old. Stay calm, work through the problem. Obviously, as a 3-year-old, it's a very different wrestling position than it is now with my 9-year-old, who's just a ball of muscle. But the concept still remains, even with whether maybe it's a schoolwork problem, whatever it is, it's a problem that you need to stay calm and work through. And whatever it is, if you have those core values, you can look to them for that extra push, for that extra drive, for that extra remembrance of why it is that you're doing what you're doing and we hire and fire based off our core values in our company. So we should be making decisions in our family based off those core values as well. Okay, does this trip make sense for the family? Does it not? Does this expense make sense for the family or not? Does it meet what we're trying to get out of life as a family?
Love it.
Absolutely. Welcome to the BizDad podcast. I am super excited to talk to Eric Beach today.
When my kids fight, I don't discipline each kid traditionally. I ask both of them to find out what they did to further this fight, to cause this. Oh, your sister hit you. What were you doing that made her upset? It wasn't right that she hit you. I'm going to talk to her, okay? But what did you do that maybe made her feel like that was her only result? And they don't necessarily like it because they just want to be told, go attack the sister. In that, they know that I'm going to be like, let's take ownership, because you can only fix what you did to bring this fight on yourself. And now your sister has to be aware that she needs to do something different before she gets to a place where she wants to hit you. This is all about mutual respect and taking ownership of what you can do different in the next situation to not create the situation that led to you getting hurt. So that's the other part, is extreme ownership, or we say own your is like the family motto. Hey, I can't do it for you. I can tell you all the wisdom I have, but until you understand that you can change your own behavior and assess what led to this situation and not just be like, yeah, but they, no, but they, and somewhere in the middle is the truth, that whole thing. That's what we go for.
So for a father out there who's listening to this and says, boy, I really wish that I was able to do that with my kids. Like, what sort of starting point? Maybe their kids are already 12 and they've gone down a path that is not so fruitful in those conversations, because we can all have a tendency to lean, especially I think dads, towards the authoritarianism side. And this is what you're going to do, and this is what you did wrong. Instead of trying to like have those conversations, they just go straight to the consequences. For somebody who wants to start going down that path, what kind of recommendations would you say, hey, this is the way that I would start doing it, especially if you've been a dad for a little while?
The first thing I would say is you have to take a look at why you chose the things that you chose, because until you understand why you did what you did, and it's not even bad stuff. Like when I yelled at my children, I felt my dad coming out of me. And so that was a conversation. I promised I would never do this if I had kids, and here I am doing it. You have to understand that about yourself, so that you can then bring that conversation to the kids, because you have to explain yourself. Saying I'm sorry is nothing, but explaining why you did what you did is not to excuse yourself, but how it wasn't their fault that you did this and you were operating under what you thought was the best thing to do. There's power in that, but it has to be authentic. It can't be forced. There's no template. There's no call sheet that you can, hello children, I'm sorry for the following things that I did in the past. No, you can't read off a script, man. It might take years. It might, and you might be only able to do it in doses, because your goal, again, is not flailing about randomly to hopefully get a new result. It's about pausing, saying, I don't like this. What am I doing that I don't like that has caused this situation? And then pivoting, which is, sitting with yourself and trying to reflect on, like, why do I do the things that I do? Why do I think this is going to work? The reason I yelled is because I wanted it to stop, because I was feeling feelings. Some of those feelings were I'm failing my children. Some of those feelings are people are going to judge me because my kids are misbehaving. And I don't want to feel that. It's going to attract attention. And when you get attention attracted to you, little Eric, who's scared of his dad, bam, bad things happen. You have to get granular on what it is that you're trying to produce out of this reaction. I just want the behavior to stop. I'm negating the fact that these children are trying to experience the world and they don't understand it. And I'm the guide. So there's ownership that you take, and that's the first pivot. And the second pivot is creating a safe space. I don't like that word because it just had such a negative, pejorative connotation.
Especially recently.
You need to create a space where this is our new way, and you have to give when you're ready, and you have to be ready for this. And I would highly recommend you do some exercise, go running, lift weights, get a fitness routine going, just so you can get that energy out and think about these things. Because there's going to come a time where you sit down and you say, and I did this every week with my kids, how am I doing as a dad? What's something I did great this week, and what's something I'm really not doing so good at that you did not like? And then they'd say, you really want me to tell you? I'm like, yeah, you have to be ready, because kids don't lie.
Yeah.
And when that comes, you're taking that as you wanted to know this because you really do care. And then the pursuing of that is the trajectory, and it's continually redressing that. It's not a one-time fix at all. It's constantly dedicating yourself to that path over and over, because kids will test you. They want security more than anyone. They want stability, and their environment has to equal love. So if love equals being yelled at by dad and running away and hiding, that's what safety means. Well, that's going to be a lot to undo.
Yeah.
I know it, because I never got that chance with my dad. And so I didn't feel safe enough. So I have to feel safe. I have to feel seen. I have to feel heard. And I have to know that I'm not going to have the hammer falling down on me like it has before. And then I also have to accept that it may never work, because it's not your choice.
Yeah.
All you can do is make your choices and hope that you can lay down a bed of openness that your kids can make a choice too. And that's a painful reality. And I have friends that are in that same boat, that they're just saying, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know I'm doing everything I can to create a loving environment for my child, and it's their choice. And some people get really mad at me when I say that too. I've had some people shut me down and get really aggressive, but it's true. And then their kids left, and because they wouldn't change. And I'm just saying, sometimes it's hard to see the world through their eyes, but we have to. And it's not to excuse them or remove accountability from them. But if we don't understand where they're coming from and how they perceived it, and I'll give you one example before I quit that. I create that open environment. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how I'm doing. And my youngest daughter, she told me one night, she was crying, and she said, Daddy, why didn't you want me? Why don't you want me? And I said, what? Why would you ever think that I don't want you? And she said, yesterday I heard you say that when you met mama, you didn't want kids. Oh, baby girl, no, I just said being a family, having children was never part of my plan. And when I met mama, I said that, and she wanted 5 kids. And that was almost a deal breaker. But now that I have them, I'm so glad I have you two. You guys are life to me. And I'm so proud to be your father. And that opened her up. But if she had not said that to me at 5, 6 years old, she grows up thinking that I never wanted her. And that's that silence. If they can't have a voice to express, and I'm not going to be safe enough to not react to them, but to speak truth, we're never going to get that world map redesigned by age 8 or 9, where it's a lot easier to do. And then after that, it starts to get harder, but it's still possible. I'm 40 and I'm still rewriting my map, and it's very possible, but it becomes more of their choice and less of a conversation.
Yeah.
Kids are great with conversations. They make some big changes when you have real conversation with them.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am excited to talk to Carlos Rovira. Really looking forward to this conversation. Is there anything that you see in your life, the way you're raising your kids or the way that you're running your business, that you're like, no, I totally get that from my parents and I need to adjust that, or I totally get this from my parents and I need to drive towards it and keep doing it?
It's a good question. My parents, they were so focused on like survival, and my mother's a very high anxiety person. So we were never taught emotional intelligence as kids. And I think for a while, I repressed a lot of what you just mentioned, like the emotional side of being a human, and learned to just be like a problem solver, just get shit done and don't cry about it and don't complain about it. Just do it. So now when my kids start crying, I jump into like fixer mode. Oh, just do this.
Yeah.
Oh, just do that. Oh, you could have just done that. Like, instead of giving them a hug, waiting for them to finish crying and then teaching them the lesson. So I think if I were to do the second option, which is to let them cry, it would teach them a little bit more emotional intelligence. And they grow up to be more stable, mentally stable people. I think I'm getting better at it because I'm obviously aware of the problem. And my younger son tends to be more empath. So like he feels things more. And I suspect that I probably as a kid was more like him, even though I don't identify as that. And just the kind of the high anxiety environment that I grew up in repressed that side of me. So I'm reliving a childhood I never had with my younger son and watching him grow up to be like this emotionally intelligent person. But sometimes it's hard to hold back that impulse of, oh, you're crying because you just drop that, just pick it up, or, oh, you spilled that, just clean it, or, oh, and that's an impulse that I have that I'm getting better at it. And I did worse with my first son, and I'm doing better with my second son, this second chance.
You're like speaking to my soul on that one. Like I tend to do the same exact thing, because there's part of me that wants to teach, like, you spilled your milk. We've got lots of milk. I can go buy more milk. We don't need the milk. This isn't a big deal. But at the same point, like, we need to recognize, like, this is important to, a 7-year-old or a 5-year-old or whatever. Like, their milk is important to them. So I need to recognize that I could tell them, hey, I know this is important. I know that this is a thing. I try to get to that. And I struggle with that all the time. And as we're, trying to make that balance between not being worried about, or just this morning, perfect example. My dog, puppy, 6 months old, went and chewed up my son's shoe. And he's 5. And that shoe meant a lot to him, right? It's got a little Iron Man thing on it. He's really excited. He loves his Iron Man. And now his shoe is gone. And it's like, it was like the end of the world for him. And I was like, dude, it's a shoe. We'll buy you another shoe. This is no big deal. And as you were saying that, I'm thinking to myself, boy, you could have really handled that a little better. Boy, I could totally see how that would hurt. That's your shoe. That's your favorite shoe. But instead, I just went to, let me just fix this. I'll just go buy a new one. And that's tough. That
really, you didn't give them a chance to deal with the emotion.
Yeah.
Which is what was physically occurring at that moment. And there's a repression that would occur there the next time. My dad was just going to tell me to fix it. Let me just not cry.
Yeah.
But have you read the love languages, the 5 love languages for the kids one? There's one for kids.
No, I have not.
Oh man, read that one and then figure out what your kids' love languages are. My older son his love language is quality time. So like he's an extrovert, and this sucks because my wife and I and my other son are all introverts. So we don't want to be around people. But when my older son, who's an extrovert, he wants to play games. Oh, can you play this with me? And you want to do this? Can we do that? And you're just like, no, I don't want to play chess now. I'm tired.
I just want to sit on the couch.
You start to realize what it is that they identify with as comforting. And for him, it's quality time. And for my younger son, it's physical touch and words of affirmation. So like the worst thing you could do to him is tell him, oh, you're bad or you're this. He'll really internalize that. Or you hit him or smack him or push him or whatever. That's the opposite of like physical touch is a big offense to him. So like when he's crying and stuff, you just got to give him a hug. It's so simple. With my other son, it's like you have to figure out more strategically, okay, how can we together figure out a solution to your problem? Yeah, be more strategic. So when I read that book, it really taught me a lot about how to deal with my kids specifically the way they are.
That's great. Have you read for trying to figure out your wife as well, or mostly just focused on your kids at the moment?
Yeah, hers is words of affirmation, which I suck at because I don't need words of affirmation. I don't need anybody to compliment me on anything. Yeah. Mine is acts of service.
Yeah.
It's funny. I realized that I tend to respond to people with acts of service. When I spilled my milk and I'm crying, oh, I'll just clean it up, right? I created an act of service for you because that's my love language. But for him, he just needs the hug because his love language is the physical touch.
Yeah.
So like you tend to use your love language, the one that you need to serve others, even though it may not be the best way to serve them. And then sometimes I feel like I'm underserved a lot of times. And I have a very high standard of what I expect. Like I do everything for myself, right? So then deplete my love tank is what she says in the book. But it's interesting there's dynamics there because my wife is words of affirmation. But since I don't need words of affirmation, I tend to try to do acts of service to her when all she needs is a compliment. And I just don't think of it, right? Like my instinct is to just do something for her.
Yeah.
So it's cool. It's an interesting book.
I love it. Yeah, I think that, so for me, the way I try to prioritize, and of course, nobody's perfect at anything, but so God, wife, and then kids. So really trying to make sure that my relationship with God is right so that I can flow that into my relationship with my wife. And anytime I get those things like out of balance, especially if I'm focusing too much on the kids, then the wife can really feel that. And I can see that she feels that. But it turns into a problem, especially with me working from home. So I'm around the kids all the time and her working still, she's in the military still. So she's got another year left where she's out of the office 10, 12 hours a day before she finally makes it home. And that's why I really need to figure out a better way to serve her so that I can keep that relationship. Because the second that my kids are out, it's still my wife and I, we got to make sure that is an extremely solid relationship.
I would challenge you to reframe that. I would challenge you to reframe that hierarchy to self, God, wife, kids, because you're not serving yourself and you're an asshole. You're not going to be able to serve God. You're not going to be able to serve your wife. You're not going to be able to serve your kids. If you're unwell and you're not serving yourself first and making sure that you are healthy, there's no way you can show up for anybody else. And if you don't have a healthy marriage, it's going to affect your kids, right?
Yeah.
So if you put your kids before you're married, then your marriage is going to suffer and your kids are going to suffer. So I would actually challenge you to go self, God, wife, kids. On that one.
You're the second person to tell me I need to adjust and put myself somewhere higher because I don't have myself anywhere on that list. And I don't know if it comes from like the military side of the house where you just don't ever think about yourself at all. Like it's just what's the mission, or where it comes from. I do a terrible job of taking care of myself. I don't know. I have to spend some time meditating on that, trying to figure out what that means for me and what that means for.
They're going to learn from you, right? Like your kids are going to see that you don't take care of yourself, and then they're just not going to take care of themselves. When they're older, they're just going to copy everything that you do. If you wake up every morning and work out, they're going to see you working out every morning. Then they're going to think that's a normal thing, and then they'll be more likely to be healthy and exercise themselves. Whereas if they see you just drinking beer in the morning and watching TV, then that's what they're going to do. They're going to drink beer and watch TV. So get shit together first.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I'm really excited to talk to Steve.
Simon Sinek had a talk one time where he does it and he's talking to everybody and then he grabs a phone and he's just talking and the phone's in the picture and he's like, are you distracted now? It's not beeping. I'm not talking on it. I'm not even looking at it, but just me holding this makes you feel less connected than if I'm talking to you and I have nothing in my hands. And, I once you hear something like that, then you feel it when you're talking to other people or you're around, somebody. So that's one of the things that I want to work on improving personally. And, anybody that's listening, like that's a big tip is like, it's tough. It's really hard to do, but there's nothing more important than that time you get with your kids. Cause 18 summers, right? Whatever, however you want to look at it. That's all you get.
Yeah, I just recently decided that, so we're going to the GoBundance event up in Vermont. That will already be done and gone by the time this episode comes out, but we're headed up there and we're doing the fam abundance beforehand. So I'm bringing the family, we're going to go up there and have a good time. I looked at my wife, I said, you know what? She couldn't get the extra days off of work, but I said, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm just going to drive up with the boys. Like, let's have an adventure with the boys. We'll stop at a couple different places. We'll make it a fun drive. It'll probably save me, $1,000 or $1,500 in plane tickets, so I'm just going to make the drive with the boys and have a good time. And then I won't have to rent a car when I get up there too. So it was like, I'm not going to get that back and they're not going to forget that. We're going to stop at a few different places, enjoy some time together, have some fun in some hotel pools. And what the heck? Like, I'm trying to find those things to be able to do to bring the kids in and help them understand it. Just recently, for their birthdays, they're both December babies. And so this past December, we went on a cruise for their birthday. We said, we're not going to get you any presents. You're not getting any presents, but we're going to take you on an adventure. So we went on their very first cruise. We went to Mexico. We had a great time on the cruise. That way, the cruise that's only my third cruise, but it was by far the rockiest. We were back and forth, which was great for the boys, not so great for the parents. Like, we were like, what in the world? Like, my oldest was like, this is so much fun. This is awesome. Like, I was like, no, it's walking down the hallways, bouncing off of each wall. It's like, good gracious. But, we were up on like the 12th floor of the 12th deck outside and they shut it down. Like, the security person came out and was like, we're closing it. It's the wind. It's too bad. Like, it was ridiculous. So I've got good videos of them trying to run against women.
We spend so much time thinking about setting plans for targeting. Like, I just wrote a Vivid Vision, like personal Vivid Vision this year. It was part of the pod challenge that we did. And that really made you like, I had never done that before. And that was really eye-opening to think about like goal setting for personal goals and where to be and where I see my kids being and then what are their goals. And anyways, it was really insightful. But you talked about cruises. That actually, so my wife's parents retired. Oh man, it's probably, I don't remember, 2015, maybe something like that. And they wanted to do a cruise. So we did a cruise to Alaska, which was
would love that.
Amazing. Like, it was so cool. And it was such a good trip. So we went with my wife's parents and her two sisters and their kids and just had a blast. So then we decided pretty much every other year or so, we've done another cruise. So we went up, man, I'm losing count now, but we went up on the East Coast. So we went up to Nova Scotia, New England coast and did that side, which that was cool. A lot of great lobster. Yeah. Did one in the Caribbean just to do it. We did one, we flew to Hong Kong and then we sailed to Japan and back. That was really cool. That was probably the only one. Like, I remember sailing out there and the weather was pretty bad. And then when we actually we missed one of our stops because of a typhoon that came in. So that was probably the roughest. It wasn't nearly as bad as you were explaining, but we had some rough seas in that one and a lot of open sea time. And then recently we just went, I might be missing one in there, but recently the last one we did last summer was we went to the Mediterranean. So we flew to Rome, stayed in Rome for a few days, and then we went to 2 stops in Greece. We went Mykonos and Santorini, and then went to Turkey and back. And then we hit Naples as well.
We're actually, it's almost that exact same path we're looking at doing this fall. To my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, we're setting it up, and they're like, hey, you guys are more than welcome to come if you want. That's almost that exact same path, hitting Italy, Greece, Turkey, and something else.
Yeah. Oh man, Santorini was like unbelievably gorgeous. Like, it was phenomenal. So there's I forget the website, Cruise, Book My Cruise or something like. There's a cruise. There's this website devoted to telling you which cruises or how many cruises are going to be in the port each day. So like, you can actually look as you're booking. If you have some flexibility in what you're booking, you can book. You can look and say, okay, I want to be in Santorini when there's less than 3 cruise ships, because it can get really crowded with 5 cruise ships. 2-hour wait for the trolley up and down or the cable lift. So you can actually look at these websites and see like, where do you want to, like, where's the optimal time, which one to book for the least number of ships in port at the different ports. You can
That
only
makes perfect
control
sense.
one or two, but Santorini's definitely one. I think there was 2 or 3 cruise ships when we were there and it was busy. Matt, if there was 5, oh my God, like it would have been much less enjoyable. So just a little traveler's tip from our recent experiences, but I love
like it.
the cruises are great. That's so much time we spend in, and you're always together on those things, right? Like you're doing all the things together. The cousins are doing things together. Like we've done a couple of cruises where they had ice rinks on the ship, so we'd bring all of our skates and do. So that was always a lot of fun. But yeah, some people don't like the cruises. They poo-poo on them because they're like, oh, I won't be on a ship. And I'm like, man, I'm the guy that drives and has to carry all the luggage. For me, if we took a trip to like Oregon or something, my wife, she really likes things clean and new. Like she doesn't like to stay in like the old school Airbnbs or old hotels or things like that. And camping is probably out of the question unless it's like glamping baby. So we're not those like we travel and do things. We're okay outdoors, but we're not the like wilderness type people. So for her, like those types of trips, it would be a lot of, I'd be driving the whole time. I'd be going, carrying the bags into a hotel, out of the hotel. And yeah, you get to immerse yourself a little more locally, but a cruise is great because you get off, you get back on, bed's made, like dinner's ready.
They put the luggage on the ship for you. They take the luggage off the ship for you. Yes.
That's been nice. So
we've done a ton of of all the things we've done, like we've traveled a ton. So a really cool thing that we're doing, this was, I think it was my wife's idea. I don't know if she stole it from somebody probably, but she has a map of the United States. And in every state that we've been to as a family, we have a family photo from. So we have photos on this map of us as a family in every state that we've been to. And I think we only have 21 states left or something like that.
Nice.
And we're hitting 3 or 4 of them on spring break. So that's become our like spring break and or summer is we're trying to plan trips around hitting all 50 states as a family before my oldest leaves. So we only have 4 years left to do. We basically need to hit 5 states a year. So it's going to be a challenge, but that was pretty cool because it takes you places like we went to different state capitals that you'd never go to. And some states will cheat, like we'll just cross the bridge and take a picture in that state and walk back. But that's a cool, it's an idea, something to give you a challenge to do something different and travel just as a family. Because the other thing I found with a lot of our travel that we were doing, like spring breaks, we'd go to Mexico or whatever we were going, because that's where some of the other families were going. And it was good, but you can always do those trips versus the trips as a family where you're going somewhere unique. We went toward Kansas City. We went and toured the football stadium and we checked out like, I forget where we were, but like the state capitol. And you saw this really cool library that was built in the 1800s. It's got a glass floor in the upper deck of the library. And I'm not a history buff, but I like to read all those little signs and crap. You know, the kids are all like, let's go. But so enjoy it where you can.
Yeah, I love taking the kids traveling somewhere. Like to me, it's always, that's one of the things I think you put in even in the pre-call sheet was like traveling is one of the things you guys love to do. And to me, you get so much out of the travels. It's not just the time, right? They get to experience things well beyond anything. It's going to be a weird thing, but I did a lot of traveling when I was younger. I was a military brat and then went into the military right afterwards. So I traveled all over the place. I went to college and I've got all these kids who had never even left the county they were born in. But they have all these opinions. They don't know why they have these opinions. They were just taught to them that this is what they should have. But the U.S. was his 6th country he'd been to. Like he was born in Japan, and then we bounced around other countries, and the U.S. was his 6th country he'd been to. He hadn't even been to the States yet. He's obviously an American citizen, but comes to the States, his 6th country. That's experience that like you're not going to get. Like you can read all the books you want, but unless you're going out and experiencing these things, you don't really know what life is like other places. And to me, I love being able to do that and help them experience that. And I will say that is one thing that is hard about cruises is you don't really get to experience the country. You get to experience where the tourists are. Yeah. My wife and I, when we went on a cruise together once, we went to, I think it was Cozumel or something. We'd stopped there and then we just jumped off and rented a moped. The 2 of us just rode around on a moped, just all over the place, just check it all out, get away from all the tourists, stop and get at a restaurant somewhere out in the middle of nowhere. Thankfully, she speaks Spanish, so that helps us out. But, somebody's at the front door, Steve.
Yeah, sorry.
Man, oh man.
He can't see him. people coming in. I got a little Alexa here at my office, so it lets me see my Ring doorbell when somebody comes home. It's always fun. My youngest likes to put on a show. He always comes home and like dance, live it or whatever. So and I kind of personality he is. He's always having fun.
I love it.
Yeah, I like that. To your point, like that. The cultural experiences are challenging. One of the things. So my wife's family. My wife's 100% Chinese, but she was born and raised here in the States near Chicagoland.
Of course, Chicagoland, of course.
So she grew up here, but her parents, one grew up in China, the other one in Hong Kong. They actually, I think they met when they came to the stateside, but we went back and visited there, I think once before kids and I think twice after we've had kids, maybe 3 times. I lose count on these things. That's how much we travel. I don't remember the number of times. But I was that kid. Like I did not board an airplane until it was for athletics for us to fly to football games. Like we flew to, I think the Rose Bowl or something I got to fly out to. And that was the first time I'd ever been on an airplane in my entire life. I was that kid because my parents worked so hard and because, we were by no means poor, but we absolutely were not the top 1%, like a lot of us tend to be. And because of that, we didn't get like our traveling was like we traveled to see our cousins or whatever. And so we had a couple of epic trips, and one of them was like we went to Jekyll Island, Georgia, and drove down there. And you really remember that trip, right? I remember everything about that trip. Like I remember going to Okefenokee Swamp and getting rained on, and my mom like carrying the thing on her head, like really distinctive memories. And I have a ton of memories with my kids, but man, they're all over the place. Like I can't remember what place did what, but Japan's, that was, the stop there was different. I was lucky enough as part of a graduate program in college, we went and stayed there for, I think a week or something and toured different construction companies. So we spent quite a bit of time over there. And you're right. The experience, like when I've been to Hong Kong, when that trip to Japan versus the cruise stop in Japan, like you really, you're right. That's the one thing you miss is you don't get that immersion. Like when I traveled to Hong Kong, like I almost started learning some of the language better because you're there and you're immersed in it versus if you're stopping there on a cruise ship, you don't have that immersion and absorption as you would. But it's so important. And I do think I worry a little bit because I have drive because I didn't have a lot. And I recognize that at some point that I didn't have a lot. And I think that's good. There's healthy and unhealthy parts. The healthy part is I have a drive and I want to succeed and I want to work hard and I want to be the best. And I had good mentors along the way. But I do worry that my kids are like totally spoiled. Like they've had all this travel. They have no one. It's like at Christmas, like you said, what do you give them for gifts? Like have anything, right? Like one of the gifts we got them was a second Xbox so they could each play it different. There's kids out there that would die to have one of them. So like, it's tough sometimes to try to keep them, to think about how to keep them grounded. I think they're good kids. Everybody else tells me they're good kids and they just seem to fight all the time.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the BizDad podcast. Today, I am very excited to have a conversation with Aaron Amuchastegui. I want to make sure that my kids learn from my wisdom, not from their mistakes. Sometimes they're just going to have to learn from their mistakes, but I really want to do everything I can to help them learn from my wisdom and learn from my mistakes because I did not learn from my parents' mistakes. It took me getting married and seeing something different, and it took you falling on your face to realize, oh boy, that was a mistake, and I don't want to do that again. So how do we prep our kids for that?
Dude, how do you prep anyone for that?
Yeah, no kidding.
Because it's really true. When you learn from someone else's mistakes instead of your own, it's true wisdom, right? That's where true wisdom actually comes from, somebody that can learn from someone else. And frankly, and unfortunately, that's never been me. I've never been able to truly learn from other people until having to fall on my face enough times to then start learning. I remember thinking my dad's advice was horrible until I was in my 20s. And then it was like, oh yeah, he was giving me the right advice the whole time. And he was like forcing some lessons on me that I needed to learn that in my 20s, I was glad I learned them, but I didn't think they were good until then. So I don't have the answer for that. I don't have the way that we go, this is how they can learn from our mistakes instead. What I do know is our kids, and what we've seen now, because my kids are getting older, is they pay way more attention to what we do and how we act than what we say.
Yeah.
I don't do drugs. I don't drink alcohol. I do Ironman races. The kids have never seen me drunk, right? Not once.
Mhm.
Like I haven't, way before I had kids, they've seen me be super healthy. They've seen me eat healthy. They've seen me make good athletic decisions. They see me treat people kindly, right? So like I think the best way you're going to have them learn from like your mistakes is really just by how you carry yourself now, right? So like my mistake is I used to do drugs and I did drugs growing up, right? They know that. They know I've been to prison. They know I did drugs. They don't see any of that. What they see is I don't do it at all anymore. And I don't make exceptions to it. And even when someone else has a glass of wine, it's no big deal. I don't. So there are certain lessons like that I hope they learn that way. I hope they learn because they go, hey, my dad's pretty cool and he doesn't do that. My dad's pretty successful and he doesn't do that. So even though I see my friends' parents drink wine, get drunk, it's okay. My dad doesn't. What's the difference? Like getting to see the difference. Oh, dad's up at 5 a.m. every day. Dad's coaching soccer and running on the sidelines. So yeah, I wish there was a good answer to it.
So do you associate like family principles to that too, so that there's a little bit more tie? Because you're representing family principles without, maybe with or without actually having them written down and that type of stuff. Do you actually write down those types of family principles so that there's a guidebook as well as a guide?
If both spouses are living the exact same way, then I think family principles works. I think most likely what happens is spouses live life slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
And so kids will actually get these real-time assessments for certain choices. This spouse works out, this one doesn't. How does it make them feel? This spouse drinks, this one doesn't. How does it make them feel? The spouse loves to read, this spouse doesn't. This one loves to, like, because there will be things that they'll see that Kalina does that they're like, I want that. I wish dad did that more. And there are going to be things, ideally, they see me do, they go, I want what dad does. Because we like seeing it when that works. We don't like seeing it the other way. So I think it's a wide range of things like that. So now we do have a family theme song that we had recorded with Brother James many years ago. It's on our YouTube page. It was professionally done. It came out and we wrote that with them. And that was this fun. I think that some of the lyrics like family, creatively living this life together, humility, generosity, making memories that'll last forever. So like a lot of little things like that in there that where we're like, this is what we do represent. Like living life to the fullest. I remember going broke, going like, you couldn't take away my memories. Right. So I do know the experiences over things is like I will be wasteful on experiences because knock on wood, because if I ever go broke again, that's the stuff they can't take away is those memories. I think I'm probably not going to go broke a fourth time, but I went to zero 3 times. I went to zero 3 times and that was rough when I did. Yeah. So we do have some family principles, but and I think and mantras work and writing stuff down works. It's a combination. If there's certain things you want to make sure your kid knows no matter what, then you have to live by them and you have to tell them how you're living by them and you're going to have to tell them why you're living by them and then have those reminders when they're out. But if you say one of our principles is being honest and they see you lie one time, then that's the pressure of being a parent.
Yeah.
If they see you lie one time, the principle's gone and the principle's worthless and dad's a liar. It's freaking crazy. I remember a moment when my dad when I'd start getting in trouble and he said, Aaron, here's something you need to know about me. When I was a kid, when I was in high school, I actually got arrested for this. I got arrested for selling drugs. I was in jail for a few weeks and I got off on a technicality. And it was like, at that time I just smoked pot like one time and he found out. And he tells me that story. And I remember being so mad and feeling so lied to and like feeling like, oh my God, he kept that secret from me for a long time. And he was like, and in his mind, he's like, it wasn't a secret. You never asked. With my kids, I told them everything as soon as I could when they were super little, right? Super young, super little. Oh yeah, dad's been to jail.
Bedtime story about dad going to jail.
Bedtime story. Because when they're 3, they love you no matter what.
Yeah.
And by the time they're 10, it's old news. Who cares if that happened to dad? But if they'd find out when they're 10, they're like, oh my God, dad's a horrible person. So anyway, I think I love the idea of having family principles and lessons you want to teach your kids. And if you're going to say, hey, here's the 5 or 10 things I really hope they learn, then you got to live by it and do it. I say, one of your, like a pre-questions, like what's my big goal of life? As I figure out, I don't know how much time we have left, but something that I think that everybody should hear. I remember going to a dad's retreat and there's, oh, what's your dream? And I remember this guy named Ryan. He's a pretty hardcore influencer guy. He's probably recognized on Instagram, but he said, I want to be obsolete. I want my kids to not need me. I want to prepare them so much for life that if I die tomorrow, they're fine. That they're going to go live life and crush it. And I was like, that's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool concept. But it's also like a sad one.
Yeah.
Like being obsolete. And when he first said that, he's like, no, I want them to not need me. I want them to be able to survive without me. Cool. So my version that I changed that to is I want to be wanted, but not needed. I want to prepare my kids to succeed in life without me. That they could succeed in life on their own, without a loan, without dad's help, without assistance. If God forbid something happened to me, they'd be fine. I want to prepare them for life that way. But I want to be wanted. What I'd really like is they don't need me anymore, but they choose to have me around because I'm fun to hang out with, because I did good memories, because they love me, because they appreciate what's there. So that becomes one of those mantras, to be wanted but not needed is that ultimate goal of when instead of principles, like that's the bigger one. I've got 4 kids. I know that the odds are that like one of them will go to jail. One of them will probably have a drug problem. Like you don't know who. One of them will learn from my mistakes. One of them will do the exact same thing I did. Like it's just, there's some stuff you can control and some stuff you can't. The other thing that I really want, I guess when my kids get in trouble, whatever it is, I want to be their very first call.
Yeah.
I want to be the one that they go, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. I need to call dad. Because when I was in high school and I was in my 20s, oh my God, I'm in so much trouble. I hope my dad doesn't find out.
Mm-hmm.
And even though he proved me time and time again that he was going to help me more than anyone else. So like he should have been my first call because he was the most experienced, the most capable, and the most loving to be able to help me with whatever I was going through. But instead I was terrified to tell them for whatever reason. So that was a difference in parenting that he did compared to what I do. So we tried to be super honest with them about my stuff. When they're super honest with me about stuff, I try to tell them, like my daughter went to this giant party, and she didn't really know it was going to be a party. And then became this giant party, and the stuff that she told us afterward, she told us because she knew, hey, if she tells us, she's not going to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh my God. And we said, you can't go back there. And she was a little bit mad. She goes, I was honest with you. You told me, you're like, no, you're not in trouble at all.
Yeah.
Right? The fact that you guys were there for 3 days without parents, like wow. No idea. Sorry that we didn't protect you from that. The fact that you were honest with us means you're not in trouble, but you don't get to go back. And then a few days later, it started coming out like these other parents, so we would have found out anyway, but she got to see that because she told us it was no big deal. Well, all these other kids were getting in so much trouble because their parents were finding out after the fact about crazy stuff. So yeah, I want to be wanted and not needed. And I want to be their first call when they're in trouble. So in order to do that, they need to never see me as a judgmental father figure.
What is one thing that you are absolutely crushing as a dad right now? And what is one thing that you really need to work on right now as a dad?
I think that I'm crushing the fact that my kids will tell me anything, and I'm super loving and super supportive of the things that they love. Right? My daughter had a rowing thing in Waco a couple weeks ago. She told me, you don't have to come, because I had to drop her off at the bus at 6 a.m. It's like a 2-hour drive away. They're going to row for 12 minutes and a 2-hour drive back. And I dropped her off at the bus, and then I drove up there. And I got to see her row by for about 15 seconds. And that was it. And she's like, Dad, you don't have to come. And I could see when she was out there how hard she was pushing. It was the farthest she'd ever gone. And I went over as they came up out of the water. And she came up and she just gave me a giant hug. And she started to she got a little teary-eyed. She goes, that was the toughest thing I've ever done, Dad. And I was like, just held her. She was also proud, but it was hard. Like she was like, just hard. She'd like given it everything she had for the first time ever. Yeah. And as we're walking around introducing her to her friends, she had her arm under mine. Like She was just glad I was there. And she said, don't show up. I show up, and I did essentially 4 hours of driving that day to see her for 10 seconds and see her for 10 minutes. And she couldn't have been happier, even though she was telling me not to show up. So that's something I'm doing a really good job at. I think something that I need to do better at, or something I've done a really good job at before, is these one-on-one experiences with all of the kids with very little phones, customize the stuff that they want. Because as they get old, like when they're 3 and 4 and you're doing it, it's awesome. And the stuff that they tell you is awesome. And when they're 10 and 11 doing it, and the conversations just change. And in the last year, which has been pretty rough on real estate, it's been pretty rough on my net worth and pretty rough on a lot of things. I'm down a lot, plus Maddie getting sick. So we had a lot of struggles, right? And so during that time, one of the things that fell to the wayside was like the one-on-one dates, we'll call them. Like the once a month, taking the girls out, making sure. So that's something that I want to get back to. I took Charlotte to a basketball game a couple weeks ago. I'll take one to a game this week. I'll start as I'm starting to get back into it, but that's something that they need more of for sure of me.
Yeah. That's something that I put in the calendar a while ago. There's another Go Abundance guy and I were going to do it. And then both of us fell off the wagon, and it's got to be it's an important thing. Our kids need to know individually that they're cared for, not just while they're around mom as well, or around the other kids. It's very important.